wait for the tone. Student Trustee Bushra-Kadra.
Present.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You have quorum.
Thank you, Director. We'll move to item 501. I need a mover or a seconder for the consent agenda items. Mr. Trustee Barry and Trustee McDonald. It's moved by Trustee Barry, seconded by Trustee McDonald, that the Upper Canada District School Board approved consent agenda items 5.02 to 5.03, March 27, 2019, as submitted. Please cast your vote. That motion passes. Item 601, are there any conflict of interest declarations? There being none, I will move to the comments from the Director of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Two really important moments we'd like to highlight for the Board of Trustees this evening that shows that we're investing in things that really matters and counts to this board. One was the student voice session that was co-facilitated last week at North Dundas District High School with Superintendent Perry and Superintendent Dawes supporting the event, and Patty White from our District Alignment Office as well. We had a great gathering of students and staff and school leaders that were talking about how to use the student survey results that we collect annually and how to use that information to inform some key decisions about how we support students at the school, especially as it relates to the wellness plans that is part of the school improvement plans for student achievement and wellness that each of our schools have. Trustee Barry was there, I know, and he was certainly impressed from our conversation that afternoon, or that morning I should say. And I do know that it lays down the great groundwork that we're looking for our next Student Senate meeting, that our Student Trustee Kadra will be supporting and promoting when we have our student senators together. So it was a very productive day. We talk a lot about student voice, and there was great evidence of where we're investing and cultivating that as a school system. Secondly, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about a really outstanding experience with our grades 7 and 8 students in our high schools into the Northeast, where there was a skills competition for about 112 students had participated that day from our high schools in the SD and G area, Prescott-Russell area. What was really encouraging about that is that we talk about the skilled trades and making sure that students start to think about those experiences as a very viable pursuit after they leave school with us. And we had students that were so engaged. We really thank Glengarry District High School for being the host of that event last week. And we had amazing coverage in the local media that also speaks to the support and the appreciation that we give to them for the support of events that are just like that. So, Mr. Chair, two great moments of pride for our school district, and glad I could bring them to you this evening.
Thank you very much, Director. We have every reason to be proud. Item 701 and 702 are comments from the Chair, and I would like to take this opportunity to comment on the flurry of government policy signals, especially over March break. What we have witnessed is an unprecedented series of announcements. From a board point of view, there are concerns. How will the board handle them? What details will be soon revealed in the anticipated grants for student needs? Will the Upper Canada District School Board be eligible for some or all? How will the funding flow? How will we be able to manage our existing and future resource commitments to our students and our staff? Other implications follow. How do these changes in direction promote real student achievement and well-being? How do these changes in direction support local needs? And how do these changes in direction reflect the special needs of our beautiful rural environment? Will these changes in direction promise relief for Upper Canada District School Board, Special Education and Transportation? Will these changes in direction support staff to help students? These announcements have pertained to students on the autism spectrum, the ban on cell phones, a rejigging of the math curriculum, a promise to improve sustainable and efficient transportation, the significant increases to class size, particularly at the secondary level, and more. Needless to say, the details and technical papers will reveal much more. With the expert guidance of the director, I, as your chair, have responded to the degree possible on each issue. Some of these announcements are critical and substantial, others less so. However, let us keep our eye on the ball, lest we be distracted from our primary goals, which I suggest are the following: managing our budget and controlling our budget, maintaining a sustainable and affordable student transportation system, developing a renewed multi-year strategic plan, finally, and most importantly, enhancing public confidence and fulfilling the very special mandate of the public education system. Essentially, that must be the mandate of this board. And to this end, I wish to make one thing very clear. The board has moved beyond its difficult decisions of March 2017. It's not our board's intent or interest either to revisit or pursue any accommodation review discussions and school closures in the foreseeable future. Finally, we appreciate the advocacy of the Ontario Public School Boards Association, when our President Kathy Abrams stated last week, and I quote, "Following today's announcement regarding enhanced support for students with autism, we look forward to the government taking a similar second look at the proposed secondary class size changes during the consultation process that has been established. Raising class size averages from 22 to 28 will have a dramatic and harmful effect on both students and staff in secondary schools across Ontario. We will continue to seek every opportunity to consult with the government on the impacts of any proposed changes to public education." End of quote. That is our position as well. We too will continue to seek every opportunity to consult with our local members of provincial parliament and their ministerial staffs. As your chair, I look forward to working with you and our senior team to address both this government's priorities as well as our own local priorities, using the lens, how can we best promote student achievement and wellness? So that concludes my remarks. I would like to cede a moment of time to Student Trustee Bushra, who wanted to add a few comments.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Through you. In light of the recent cuts to education made by the provincial government, I've seen many discussions circulating both online and in person. Regardless of if you agree with the changes or not, I think it is crucial for all students to understand precisely what the proposed changes mean. I've seen many websites and posts that have been put on social media with a lack of understanding of the changes. I highly encourage all students to read the policies, watch the statement done by the provincial government, and fact-check everything they read online, and then form their own opinions, not based on the opinions of their friends or what they read on social media. I've seen various forms of students advocating for themselves lately. Student voice is incredibly important, and we are the most impacted at the end of the day. Please know that I'm not condemning any specific cause. I'm simply asking for students to understand what they're advocating for and why. Activists, do not follow in ignorance. They use their passions to drive them. I highly encourage all students to conduct their own research, write a letter to their local MPP, comment under the Minister of Education, Lisa Thompson's posts, tweet at the Parliamentary Assistant to the Minister of Education, Sam Oosterhoff, and use their voices on social media, and use their voice on social media. And lastly, I just want to remind everyone that not everyone will agree with your opinions and beliefs, and that's okay. As long as you believe in what you are saying, that's what matters the most. Thank you.
Thank you, Student Trustee Bushra. Those are very wise words of wisdom for your colleagues, your peers. and on how to be proactive in a very constructive and positive way. So thank you. Item 901, I'm pleased to introduce the principal of Long Sault Public School, who will be presenting the school improvement plan for student achievement and wellness. So please, Kieran. And Superintendent Rudders, would you care to make the introduction?
Absolutely, through you, Chair. So it's my pleasure to introduce Kieran Kennedy, and Kieran and I have had the opportunity to work together for many years as principals and vice principals in the system. Kieran's currently principal of Long Sault Public School, and this is his 4th year at Long Sault. Prior to that, he did a number of he served at a number of schools in Cornwall: Amherst Corners Public Schools, Central Public School, East Front Public School. So Stormont County has had the benefit of Kieran's leadership for the most part in his principal career, although he did spend some time in Glengarry and as far down as Prescott Russell in our school in Van Cleek Hills. So welcome to Kieran. We appreciate your time in being here, Kieran, and we appreciate your leadership, and in particular your passion for engaging students in physical activity and healthy lifestyles. So appreciate you being here.
Good evening. My name is Kieran Kennedy, principal of Long Sault Public School. I'm pleased to have the opportunity to share some information about the school, including highlighting some of the very important and meaningful work that we're doing to increase student achievement and wellness levels. I assumed the principalship of this school in 2015, and my time here has been extremely rewarding, given that I started my teaching career 29 years ago at this very school, and had the unique pleasure of teaching alongside my mother that first year of teaching. Now, I did avoid the staff room like the plague that year, but all in all, it was a very great start to my career as an educator. And both of my boys graduated from Long Sault Public School when it was a K-8 school. So it was really neat to see that school community from the vantage point of a parent as well. Long Sault Public School was founded in 1958 due to the creation of the St. Lawrence Seaway. The school housed residents from the village of Long Sault, in addition to some of the students from the riverside communities known as the Lost Villages. Last May saw the school celebrate a highly successful 60th anniversary. And we're a dual-track school, population of 270 students. Currently, 96% of our students are in the immersion track. We feed primarily into Tugwa Secondary School, and like many schools in the Upper Canada Board, our primary and junior students are afforded a tremendous array of extracurricular activities throughout the school year, and this does wonderful things at helping foster student engagement, leadership opportunities, character development in a fun and varied manner. And I say that without bias because my staff truly do give a tremendous amount of their time. And I haven't been at a school where actually I've seen primary extracurricular activities afforded to students, but that's very vibrant at this school too. So holistically, it's outstanding. We also are passionate about healthy living, as evidenced by our QDPE program, healthy nutrition initiatives, and a vibrant student wellness program that I brought to Long Sault Public School, which you'll hear a little bit more about later, called Spec Ops. Long Sault Public School has a very active school council, a large stakeholder volunteer base. We almost 150 parents being recognized at our volunteer annual recognition things. And we have really wonderful embedded partnerships with the Township of South Stormont, the Lost Village Historical Society, the OPP, Sunset Cove Retirement Home, the Terry Fox Foundation, and the Children's Treatment Center. As readers in EQAO in the primary division, our students have averaged 76% over the past 4 years, with 2 of those years being just under the provincial standard at 68%. In the junior division, our students have achieved outstanding results as evidenced by them achieving an average of 87% over the last 4 years. During cycles 1 and 2 this year with SIPSA, we've subsequently focused on teaching our students to support their opinions using relevant information from the text. The goal was driven by the specifics from EQAO last year at 23% of our grade 3 students and 26% 58% of our grade 6 students had scored level 3 or 4 in their open response question, which showed a weakness in their capacity to support their answers with relevant details. The bulk of our work has centered on teaching students how to identify important information from texts, and Cycle 2 literacy SIPSA work will intentionally focus on having these students formulate and justify opinions based on texts and shared from different content subject areas. As writers, our students in the junior division have consistently achieved the provincial standard, as did the primary division, except for 2017 and 2018. Junior students have averaged 78%, and our primary students 81% at or above the provincial standard over the past 4 years. Writing has not been a direct SIPSA focus for our literacy team during Cycle 1 and Cycle 2. And in numeracy as problem solvers, our results in the area of math mirror the board and provincial trends, as they are significantly lower than reading and writing. Junior students have averaged 35%, and our grade 3 students 56% over the past 4 years. Due to our EQAO numeracy results being significantly below the provincial standard and also declining during the past 4 years, our literacy numeracy SIPSA focus has mirrored the board's renewed math strategy focus by looking at the fundamentals of math operations. Cycle 1 and Cycle 2 specifics from this work to date include teaching students to identify and use more efficient strategies to help develop a stronger approach to problem solving and building stronger number sense. For numeracy, our initial Cycle 1 work for grade 1 to 6 focused on having staff members familiarize themselves with Lawson's continuum for addition and subtraction, and to teach our students to monitor how efficiently the strategies they are using are working. Anchor charts, which are visuals that we have around the classroom, are co-constructed with teachers and students and display different strategies along this continuum and serve as a reference point for students to be able to self-assess themselves. We also help students develop necessary skills. Teachers have been using groupings of students who are using a similar strategy and provided them with games and activities to help them develop the requisite skills that comprise a more efficient strategy. Cycle 2 will see numeracy team members following a similar plan of action, focused now on multiplication and division strategies with a heightened focus on student self-assessment. Results from Cycle 1 were promising, as 88% of our marker students demonstrated proficiency in using more efficient strategies along the addition and subtraction continuums. For literacy, our work in Cycle 1 has centered on increasing the capacity of our students to determine important information from different texts in different contexts in all subject areas. This goal was derived from EQAO data related to the fact that our grade 3 and 6 students last year struggled with open response questions due to their inability to support their answers with important details from shared texts. Additionally, we looked at the concept of active listening as a crucial skill which allows students to understand and determine important ideas from a text. To do this, an active listening continuum for grades 1 to 6 was created from the curriculum and will be rolled out to our students next month. Staff and students will be co-generating success criteria as a visible frame of reference for active listening expectations, and committed to using this criteria to help students self and peer assess their active listening skills as they participate in shared reading activities. We are really looking at the global competency of collaboration this year, and you're going to see that prevalent in our work that we're doing in math, in literacy, and even in wellness. And one of the big ideas with and skill sets that you need to collaborate is to be a good listener. And we've been very, very intentional with the work that we've been doing in that area. Staff, for a change in teaching practice as well, which is important, have also committed to intentionally using more open-ended questions to afford students different vantage points with respect to opinion, which additionally should raise student engagement levels. And we've started our second cycle off with some debating, and a hot topic even for grade sixes was the cell phone topic, as you can imagine too. So we're getting some really great discourse with that. And the teachers, there's been a journey there, because you have to really look at your own practice, and you can't expect rich dialogue if you're asking just regurgitation type questions and that too. So that's been a change in practice, which has been important and now visible throughout the school. For wellness, this was a big undertaking, but it's been extremely rewarding. So our overall goal was to increase skills within the global competency of collaboration with our students and foster rich ongoing opportunities for engaging collaborative challenges and deeper peer-to-peer and adult-to-student connections. We look at anxiety as a red flag in our system, and I think one of the most important things, in my opinion, that can help overcome this is students being able to foster great connections with caring adults, and also peer-to-peer connections too. So we started this initiative called Color Teams, and basically took 270 students, K to 6, and divided them into 10 teams designated by colors. We assigned 2 staff champions to each of these teams, and we've been committed to, on a monthly basis, to coming together and doing a variety of activities that really meet the needs of all learners. Everything is aimed at collaboration. We've been creating timed tasks where the kids have to work together and collaborate together and then share their work. There's been activities related to the arts. We had a dance group recently come to the school, showcased collaboration in action. And I just had Principal Fisher, I just asked him to hold up. We just finished that one a couple months ago. So beside each of the team headquarters, there's a very personalized mural of all the students and staff assigned to that team. And this is a multi-year project in the sense that the team should, thanks Kevin, the team should stay together, and we'll just add new students as they come to the school. And when we have new staff members, they'll be assigned to that team. So the partnerships should have a natural chance to be embedded as the years progress. But already, even with myself being as part of Team Purple, you get to see these kids in your group, and they get to see you in a different light. And I could tell you want to stress out some kindergarten teachers, tell them on the first month of the school year that their students are going to be leaving the safe confines of a kindergarten class and traveling across the school and ending up in this room with unfamiliar kids and adults. But now it's just it just happens. These days they're really anticipated, and the response we've gotten back from the students, which we really monitor carefully, has been very positive. So we're looking forward to using this as a vehicle to do a lot of things at the school. This year it's been centered on teaching kids how to collaborate. And the very last thing I'd like to talk about is a wellness program called Spec Ops. So I created this program about 10 years ago. I was at a conference with some cardiologists, and a cardiologist stood up and gave this statistic that the group of students that we have in our school are the first generation of students who are at risk of not outliving their parents. So we know all about the issues that are plaguing our youth with respect to health. And this program is a vibrant opportunity for kids to become healthier, to learn healthy habits and exercises that certainly parallel what my phys ed teacher Ian Callan does in his classroom. And I have 80% of the school in grades 3 to 6 signed up for this. They give up their recess times. They're taught exercises, body weight exercises that they do at home, and they do in a rigorous manner within the context of a recess. They're given leadership opportunities outside of the classroom to really demonstrate what they've learned, and the results are outstanding. They're all there because they're volunteers, and a high level of engagement. And you see the growth that these kids experience, not just on a physical thing, but we all know that exercise is a wonderful vehicle for developing these virtues that we honor as a board with respect to resiliency, with respect to perseverance. And last year we were doing a lot of our CIPSA work around the concept of growth mindset. And Spec Ops certainly parallels exceedingly well with that as well. So that's a little bit about Spec Ops. And the last thing is we've got a great community partner with the Kinsman Club of Cornwall. Every year that club, they have placed student wellness on top of their agenda, and they've granted Long Sault Public School, and before that Amherst Corners, and before that Central Public School, usually about $2,000 from proceeds from their pizza party. I know the Brockville Kinsman Club has started that as well. So this program runs without any school budget funds, and to have that many students involved, 75 students in a self-sustained program that runs all year. These are the badges of honor for the kids. We reward perseverance and completion. So when a child completes a term successfully, they get a different colored bracelet. So you'll see kids walking around along, so they've got these bracelets all up their arms, and that's what these bracelets signify. But the program works not because of extrinsic motivation, just because intrinsically they see the value in it. So I want to thank Chair McAllister and his fellow trustees, along with Director Sliwa and members of the senior MIN team, for allowing me this speaking opportunity. The outcome of this process certainly assists with transparency and awareness. Special thanks to my superintendent, Susan Rudders, and to Patty White for their excellent support with my presentation preparation. Continued thanks to Trustee John Danaher for being a great advocate of the school. Thank you all on behalf of Long Sault Public School.
Thank you very much, Principal Kevin. I'll open the floor to questions, and I'll begin with Trustee Danaher.
Long Sault always amazes me. My wife taught there too, as you know, Karen, years and years and years ago. And it has such strong community support and such a dynamic group of people. And I just want to say, Karen, you're one of the perfect guys to run that school, because you just fit into that community. So having grown up there, but not because you grew up there, because of your personality and your type. I only have one question for you. That when I was looking at the EQA results, it amazed me in the reading where in the lower levels they were behind the, if I read that correctly, and then as they got up to grade 6 they surpassed. And I was trying to figure out why, or what you would attribute that to, where primary level they were below, and then later levels they did really well.
Yeah, we've had some consistency certainly with the junior staffing and with respect to the literacy, and that group's really come together. And I think a lot of the work now that we're really doing is to try to align all staff with EQAO. And in terms of the preparation, what the test is asking our kids to do, and everybody has heard that it's not the grade 3 and 6 teachers' task to achieve EQAO results. And I think there's some capacity that needs to continue to happen at the school, but we're seeing more collaboration around that, and I think you're going to see that more parity with those results as it goes on. Trustee Danner.
That's good work.
Trustee McRae.
Thank you. Would you repeat that the physician said at the conference 10 years ago? What was that first line?
Yeah, this group of students that we have in our school, so from kindergarten to grade 12, it's the first generation of students who are at risk of not outliving their parents.
Thank you. Wow.
Sober second thought. Any other questions? Well, Trustee Kieran, thank you so much for a very informative presentation, and I wish you well in the rest of this school year and next. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a little technical problem, so I'm going to take a pause for about 2 or 3 minutes. Don't leave. And Lisa has to connect and reconnect with the folks. Bear with us, please.
Please enter your passcode, followed by the pound or hash key. When you hear the tone, you will be the third person to join the meeting.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are prepared to resume. I'd like to introduce Principal Kevin Fisher of North Elmsley Public Schools, and I would ask Bill Loshaw to make a few introductory remarks.
Great. Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I have the pleasure of welcoming Kevin Fisher to tonight's meeting. Kevin is a very proud and positive principal of North Elmsley, and I should mention that when I go to visit Kevin, I usually have to track him down in a classroom or in the gymnasium or somewhere else in the school where he's often supporting students with their reading. He's a very involved principal. He speaks very positively of the teamwork that exists within the school. He works very closely with the community, and he speaks very positively of that experience as well. And tonight he's going to share his journey with regard to his school improvement plan for student achievement and well-being.
Thank you, Bill.
The floor is yours.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, I'd like to thank the trustees for providing this opportunity for reflection on the great achievements of North Elmsley. So North Elmsley is a school grounded in the township of North Elmsley and Drummond. We welcome partners from the Engineers in Residence program, Big Brothers Big Sisters, Lanark County Community Justice, and the Township of North Elmsley. The school opened in 1965, and we have many alumni living in the community who are strong advocates and enthusiastic supporters of our school. More families from out of boundary choose to bring their children to the school than families within the boundaries that choose to go elsewhere. I believe that this speaks volumes, considering that we offer regular French instruction. Our students are enrolled in 4 classes, grades JK to grade 6. About 5% of our students self-identify as Métis or First Nations. We provide a hot breakfast every day to the kindergarten students, and each classroom has a healthy snack bin that is emptied daily of the 15 snacks. As part of the healthy school approach, students have 30 minutes of physical education every day and a fitness class every day 5. Our school council is strong and very positive about providing cultural and recreational opportunities for the kids of North Elmsley. We have a loyal crew of 15 volunteers who help with everything from food bins to classroom supports and school community events like the recent Maker Night that focused on science, technology, education, and math activities for the students and families. As we examine the EQO data for NEPs, we need to be cognizant that using only statistics and percentages to reflect what's happening at North Elmsley, be cognizant of using only statistics and percentages to reflect what's happening at North Elmsley because of the small sample size. Most grades have 10 students, so the difference of 1 student can raise or drop by 10%. There are areas of strength and areas for improvement, and what this chart doesn't show is the number of students who score at a C or C+ on EQAO. 100% of the students at North Elmsley score at or near the provincial standard. Looking at the trend data and cohort data, we can identify areas for improvement. As well, we're also able to delve deeper into a few questions of where our students seem to struggle quite a lot more than the board or province, regardless of their overall results. That gives us some great starting points for work this year. These results reflect our current data and demonstrate that more than half of our primary students are below reading assessments, but most catch up by grades 5 and grade 6. Our writing has become a focus for literacy SIPSAW as the cohort data indicate a decrease in writing achievement. Our numeracy data is a bit more complicated, but also demonstrate that students in both primary and junior grades are struggling with fundamental math scores or concepts. The problem-solving struggles that the students experience is in part connected to the reading and writing challenges that the students have, and they have difficulty understanding what the questions ask and how to explain their thinking. So for literacy, we've discovered that students don't like to rewrite their work or revisit and edit their own writing. The EQAO attitudinal data consistently show that students feel they are good writers and that they try their best at writing. However, they are a one and done group. In the kindergarten to grade 4 classes, the teachers have created a continuum for students to measure their own writing against. This is a writing rainbow, it's shown in the picture there, with each color describing the stage for improvement. Students use the examples and compare their own writing, and the lack of grades on the continuum fosters more dialogue with the students and peers and teachers. Students look at how their writing fits the rainbow and they can identify what is needed. The pyramid of an intervention on the right has some highlights of reading and writing strategies. Most of the intentional teacher moves in writing focus on the 80% base of the population, the part in green. The more intense intervention strategies are reading-based, as there is a strong connection between reading and writing, and often students who struggle to read also struggle to write. 15% of the population in the yellow are some of the more needy students and require directed programs. The experiences in reading different genres allow students to experience different forms of writing. We have an Empower Reading with a small group of 6, a boys book club with a group of 4 junior readers, and small group instruction with the learning resource teacher. These programs permit us to develop reading skills and resultingly the writing skills. In math, our data indicate that we need to build number fluency and problem-solving skills. We've been using Nicky Newton's math running records to determine what skills students have mastered and what they're missing. We are working to establish non-threatening classroom environments where students talk with each other about the math and share the ideas. Much of the math work accomplished by students is focused on meaningful math problems that usually involve multiple steps and more than one possible path to a solution. The fundamental math workshops are attended by 2 teachers who each work with a division partner to share the ideas that were presented at these workshops. The assessment focus is on the work that students do together. What we've noticed with this approach is a decrease in students regulating their anxiety by going to the bathroom or leaving class. Feedback is given through prompts and asking students to do further thinking, and grades are often withheld, so the focus is on the learning and not on the mark. Students in the green area of the intervention participate in small group instruction of stay at the table to receive more help or stray back to their own workspace to work independently. In these small groups, Kathy Fosnaught's number strings are used to push student thinking to see patterns and multiplications based on known student facts. Also, there are math games for understanding that are taught and played to meet specific math concepts that require reinforcement. These games are also encouraged for the kids to play at home. So for our wellness, in September, the staff attended a workshop on the work of Stuart Shanker that focused on self-reg. Since then, the staff have daily conversations based on this graphic about student stress behavior. Children do well when they can, not when they want to. We have adopted the mantra of see a child differently and you will see a different child. The yet philosophy that Carol Dweck brings to her math talks and math classrooms also applies to the skill deficits that students exhibit in mathematics and language, as well as in their social well-being. We attend principally to the biological and the emotional domains of the student and staff in our wellness SIPSA. Changes in these 2 domains are the easiest to detect and the easiest to adapt within a school setting. Working to reduce the stress in these two domains permits us to influence the cognitive domain so that when we increase the stress in a more challenging cognitive tasks, the students with lower emotional and biological stress are better equipped to engage in the thinking. In terms of biological or the domains, the classrooms have places for students to do their work where they can meet a variety of the regulation needs. We don't have just students at desks, we have them all over. We have little quiet spaces or comfortable chairs. Students that need quiet spaces can work in locations other than their desks. Within the classroom, there's organization of minimal visual material on the walls. Teachers have decluttered their walls, bulletin boards and shelves, and students are encouraged to change a body position, to work at a counter height or at a bookshelf, at a couch or a beanbag chair, and alternatives to sitting, such as standing or on a carpet area with clipboards, are strongly encouraged. Students work in the halls where they might find it less noisy than in their classrooms. These strategies have fostered a classroom environment where students feel comfortable taking risks because their learning and other domains of stress are reduced. So finally, I'd like to highlight a parental feedback survey on the gains that we have made towards the goal of the director's work plan and the trustees' work plan of increasing student ability to deal with stress. As a staff, we build consensus for student expected behavior on a belief that positive behavior can be taught and needs to be reinforced frequently. We believe that students experience less stress when there are clear expectations for behavior. We have a multifaceted approach to inclusion and respect that is the fiber of how we do business at NEPS. We use restorative circles with our students to focus on the social domain of their self-reg cycles. Everyone is given an opportunity to have their say, and everyone hears the impact of their behaviors. These are done both in the classroom for sharing and with myself when there is conflict. Individual students follow a prescribed sensory circuit to reduce their biological stress in their self-reg cycle. Pro-social behaviors are reinforced by all the staff as they encourage inclusive education for all the students with special needs. To exemplify this, we have a student with spinal muscular atrophy, and he uses a scooter to get around. He's in the picture. He's often chosen third for teams, not last. Like at soccer, and he's always included in games of tag. The students with behavioral challenges and also those who have autism are included in classroom activities and often have students who help them with their regulation strategies. 20-question caregiver satisfaction survey was handed out in February and provided a positive summary for the work that we have accomplished. Several anecdotes about inclusion and caring and safety of NEPS are included on the were in it, and as one parent recounted, "I love how North Elmsley kids treat other kids with special needs. I work at PDCI and witness how this continues on after they leave NEPS." So as you can see, we have much to celebrate, and I thank you for your support. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kevin, for a very interesting presentation. There's one quotation that I find intriguing, and see a child differently and you will see a different child. I sort of challenge you all to substitute a word for child. Could be a superintendent, could be a director, could be a trustee, could be the word issue. Fascinating. The significance of the two class photos have not escaped our attention. And I would ask the identified scholar present among us to perhaps make a few comments or direct the questions.
Thank you. Not sure where to start. 1965 would probably be a good time. 1965, Lester B. Pearson was our Prime Minister. A new Canadian flag was born. The Toronto Maple Leafs actually won the Stanley Cup that year, and for the last time, I believe. and a new school opened in Port Elmsley Village. The school was built, I'm not going to give you a history lesson, but you can see where it's going. The school was built in Charlie Jackson's pasture. They moved the fence back 400 feet, and for the last 53 years, if I'm doing my math right, North Elmsley has been neighbor to cows. Every year there's been kids in that school, there's been cows in the field behind. And over the years, kids have gotten into the cow pasture, and cows from time to time get into the kids' pasture, the playground. And back when I was going to school, most of us were farmers. If the cows got in, the principal set us out, and we got rid of the cows. However, the rumor mill has it that the last time the cows got out, the principal went and escorted the cows back to the pasture. And Mr. Fisher is known in some circles as the cow whisperer. So, I thank you for a very unique presentation. I think this is a principal test to see if we actually read these things before the meetings. And I have to admit, I was part of that group. We came from 8 one-room schools, actually 7, because ours burnt twice. It burnt, and then they give us another place, and it burnt too, so they figured there's something wrong with this bunch of kids. But it was a group of kids that were brought together from across the township. Most of us didn't know each other before the first day. At the end, we were all Ruby's kids. I do want to mention the principal. I may be talking too long, but Ruby Imeson was the principal and the grade 8 teacher for a school of 218 kids on opening day. I'm not going to say Ruby was short, but she had a yardstick that she used to tap and keep everyone focused. Unfortunately, that was before the metric system, because if it had been a meter stick, it would have been taller than she was. So, thank you for a very interesting presentation, and turn it open to the chair.
Thank you, Trustee McPherson. Are there any other questions? Amy?
I have a question through you, Chair. One of the things that I've noticed in the presentations that we've had over the last number of meetings relates to the EQAO math scores. And I need to become better informed about the Alex Lawson approach, and so I plan to do that. But I have a two-part question, I guess, that perhaps is better directed to the superintendent. Can you inform me, I guess, how are we using our system supports, our system resources rather, to support our principals as they try to support teachers in addressing the, I'm not going to say deficiencies, but the lower scores that we have in math? And the second part of that question is, to what do we attribute the oftentimes dramatic drop amongst the same cohort from the grade 3 scores to the grade 6 scores? That's my question.
Okay. So through you, Chair, first off, I'd like to say that the timing of your question is very good, in that tomorrow and on Friday of this week, we have system-wide math days where each principal will attend the math days with 2 or more teachers. And they will focus their work on math that they will then follow up with at their schools in their learning teams. So very much there's a collaborative approach, and with the support of learning partners as well. So I think a common theme throughout many of the presentations has been the focus on Alex Lawson's continuum. And it provides a common language and a common approach. And I think that that's been helpful. And what we're hearing from our system program folks is that we're seeing tremendous gains in terms of the strategies that students are using and the efficiency that, with which they're using the strategies.
Okay. And then part 2, the drop, is there anything that we can attribute? And correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems that it could be a system-wide issue where we get this huge big drop between 3 and 6. And I don't necessarily need an answer right now, but it's just something that I've noticed, and wondering if it's because the content has become so difficult by the time they get to grade 6.
So through you, Chair, I'd like to look into this a little further, and perhaps we could follow up with a conversation about the trend.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Thank you very much, Kevin.
Thank you.
Appreciate your
Chair.
very interesting presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to move on to item 903, which is the financial forecast. And I would invite Mr. Ronley.
Mr. Chair,
Floor.
good evening, trustees. On behalf of the senior administration and the business department staff, I'm pleased to present our second financial forecast for the 2018-19 fiscal year. Financial Forecast 2 represents a further refinement of our original budget. It combines 6 months of actual spending and is updated with our budgeting assumptions for the balance of the year. As you know, enrollment is a key driver of board revenue. Enrollment projections in this forecast are based on the actual number of students at October 31st, 2018, and in addition, our enrollment projections for March 31st, 2019. We've also incorporated other factors that can influence change. With tonight's presentation, trustees will see that the forecasted deficit now sits at $3.6 million. This represents an improvement of $1.1 million to financial forecast number 1 that was presented in January. You'll be familiar with this slide. It's our business cycle. We've progressed through the 2018-2019 fiscal year, starting with the approval of the 2018-19 budget in the blue box in the top left. This was approved by the board in May 2018 and submitted to the Ministry of Education in June 2018. As we move to the right, we see the revised budget and financial forecast number 1. This was submitted to the Ministry of Education in December and presented to the board in January. Tonight brings us to the green circle around March, and this is financial forecast number 2. You'll see the labeling there. This represents senior administration's second regularly scheduled financial forecast update for the 2018-19 year. In June, you'll receive financial forecast number 3, followed by the audited financial statements later in the year. These statements will be audited by KPMG and presented to the board in November. And you'll see that marked in the blue box on the top right-hand corner. The data in this slide shows the change in the average daily enrollment, or ADE, between financial forecasts number 1 and 2. The updated enrollment is based on data provided by our planning department. The average daily enrollment is measured, or is a measurement of the average number of students between 2 count dates of October 31st, 2018 and March 31st, 2019. In June, financial forecast number 3 will incorporate the actual March 31st, 2019 counts. You'll note that the overall difference between our first and second financial forecasts is a decrease of 29 ADE. Slide 4 uses the same overall enrollment numbers from our last slide and simply breaks them into 2 classifications based on the source of funding. The first is pupils of the board. This is funded by the Ministry of Education through the Grants for Student Needs, or GSNs. Other pupils are tuition fee paying students, and include international students and students from the Akwesasne Mohawk Board of Education. This slide shows the change in the board's in-year financial position between financial forecast number 1 and financial forecast number 2. With the incremental updates incorporated into this forecast, there's an in-year improvement of $1.1 million. This means that the deficit for ministry compliance reporting purposes has decreased from $4.7 million on financial forecast number 1 to $3.6 million. Now I'll carry this particular analysis through to the next slide. As with the previous slide, we've indicated the deficit for each financial cycle along with the change between the two. Listed below are the main contributors impacting the change between financial forecast number 1 and 2. The contributing factors have been categorized into 2 sections. The change in deficit before transportation results in a $700,000 deficit reduction. That's in the light blue. The change in deficit related to transportation operations is a $400,000 reduction in deficit, and that's in the darker blue. The main contributors to the deficit before transportation are as follows. The update in GSN revenue and tuition fees shows the financial impact of the enrollment decline of 29 ADE. The reduction in interest revenue is a result of the Ministry of Education's recently implemented cash management strategy. The strategy requires funds related to unused proceeds of disposition from the sale of board assets to be returned to the ministry till such time as approval is given to apply the funds towards future capital projects. The closeout of Sun Life liability is a one-time favorable impact. It's due to the final reconciliation of expenses associated with the wind-up of activity of our former health, dental, and insurance provider, Sun Life. All eligible claims were processed during the runoff period, and there should be no further financial impact to this item. The unallocated staff budget resulted from a lower than anticipated enrollment from the original budget approved in May 2018. This reduced overall staffing needs to meet class size requirement, or this reduced overall staffing needs to meet class size requirements. And finally, the realignment of learning partners represents a repositioning of system staff to utilize ministry funding sources. The deficit related to transportation operations has decreased from $3.8 million in the financial forecast number 1 to $3.4 million in financial forecast number 2. The main reasons for the change are associated with bus cancellations due to the inclement weather days, and also some further refinements in routes. For compliance purposes, the board is projecting an in-year operating deficit of $3.6 million. As you recall, the compliance threshold for the board is a deficit of $3.3 million, which represents 1% of the operating revenue. Since the in-year deficit exceeds the threshold deficit allowed, the board is non-compliant with ministry regulations. The other compliance threshold that the board is required to meet relates to the administration and governance envelope. The measurement criteria for this compliance calculation is that total expenses must not exceed the revenue available. With this forecast, the board is projected to be compliant. This slide provides a snapshot of the board's accumulated surplus, incorporating the in-year deficit number from financial forecast number 2. The first column shows the actual beginning balances as of September 1st, 2018, that are included in the board's accumulated surplus accounts. The middle column displays the projected in-year change to the board's surplus. The last column shows the projected ending balances as at August 31st, 2019. I'll now provide a line-by-line description. Line 1 is the operating accumulated surplus available for compliance and represents the availability of funds, if any, not committed for an intended purpose, and that can be used to address any in-year deficit. These balances are in a deficit position. This has previously been referred to as the board's working funds or flexibility available to deal with planned and unplanned situations that may arise during any given year. In terms of 2018-19, both the beginning balance and the projected in-year results have been negatively impacted because of the STIO arbitration order. In terms of the negative $3.6 million in the middle of the column, $3.4 million is attributable to the transportation deficit. Line 2 is the total internally appropriated funds available for compliance. This represents the portion of the board's surplus, if any, available to address normally restricted or appropriated funds to support specific purposes. The beginning balance included a $6.2 million surplus appropriated for specific purposes. As of financial forecast number 2, there are no significant in-year changes anticipated to alter the overall ending balance in this line. Line 3 is the total accumulated surplus or deficit available for compliance, and it represents the combined amounts for lines 1 and 2. This is the line that is used to determine whether a board is compliant under the ministry's regulations regarding balanced budget determination. The surplus balance in the first column represents what's available to address any in-year deficit in the second column for compliance purposes. Although the board has a sufficient beginning balance in the first column to cover the $3.6 million in-year deficit, the board's not compliant as the latter exceeds 1% of the GSN operating allocations for 2018-19. As a reminder, the in-year change in column 2 of $3.6 million does represent the in-year deficit displayed on the previous slides. This line here, line 3, will carry over to the next slide 9. Line 4, it's total externally appropriated funds and represents the portion of the accumulated surplus designated for purposes other than meeting our regular operational obligations. The items associated with this line are excluded from the board's deficit calculation for compliance purposes. The in-year surplus on this line is not available to address any in-year deficit calculated for compliance purposes. Line 5 is the total accumulated surplus and represents the combined amounts available and unavailable for compliance purposes. The total of these amounts on line 5 are what the board is responsible for as a legally functioning entity. And you'll note, if you looked at our audited financial statements from last year, 3.4 million would tie into the audited financial statements for the accumulated surplus. The last slide of our presentation is a reminder of the types of risks and opportunities the board continues to be exposed to throughout the balance of the year. These may have material financial impact should any one or a combination of these occur. The impacts may have a positive or negative effect on the year-end financial results. WSIB experience. While we receive periodic updates related to actual claims incurred, future occurrences are uncertain and they are difficult to predict. Changes to previous claims estimates can also have a big impact. Semester 2 enrollment is still a projection at this point in time. As noted earlier in the presentation, enrollment projections in financial forecast number 2 are based on our updated number of students, or our actual students at October 31st, 2018, and the March 31st count dates that will soon come by. Actuarial valuations. Annually, the board's actuary provides a report during the year-end financial statement process. It outlines liabilities associated with the employee future benefits. Changes to assumptions used in the actuarial calculation of future liabilities, for example, WSIB and employee future benefits, can have a significant impact on financial results, either to the plus or to the minus. The assumptions used in these valuations include interest rates, salary levels, mortality rates, and what they're anticipating on claims experience. Interest revenue has been impacted by rate changes and the provincial cash management strategy discussed earlier. School operations include unpredictable weather. Transportation operations. As with school operations, weather conditions have had an impact on the cost of transporting students. Routing adjustments and efficiencies in the remainder of the school year can also have an impact. Mr. Chair, this concludes the presentation of financial forecast number 2. In closing, I'd like to take an opportunity to thank the senior administration and the business department staff for their skill and their dedication in preparing the forecast along with tonight's accompanying presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Onley. Trustees, do you have any questions about forecast number 2? Mr. McPherson.
Thank you. I'm hoping that I heard this wrong. Slide number 6. You referred to reduction in interest due to ministry recovery of funds as it relates to the sale of properties. Did I hear that right? So essentially, if we dispose of a school like Montague Central has recently been sold, that money does not stay with the board unless it's assigned to a capital project.
The province recognizes the time value of money. They take the money back until we need it, and when we do, they'll give it back. That's essentially how that operates.
What bothers me about this is that most of these small consolidated schools were built on local debenture by the local communities. And at the same time, I know this is a question, we have boards sitting on millions of dollars worth of real estate. So is this kind of a disincentive for some of the larger boards to dispose of properties?
Well, this would be a consideration. I mean, if you start considering at some of the major centers, consider Toronto School Board, property in Toronto, a small bungalow or a small detached house is $1 million. You can imagine what a school property would be valued at.
So I'll go back to Montague, because the brand new school is sitting across the road. The old school's over here. So we're not allowed to invest in the new school, like upgrade the playground or anything like that for those kids.
Oh, well, I guess we can maybe, you might be able to jump in with the funds that are held. They can be released for school purposes, for construction, but I'm just not clear on the betterment. So if it was a school ground, do you have any sense of how we could access those funds, or would we be able to?
The proceed through you, Mr. Chair, if I may. Proceeds of distribution or of a disposition, even when we actually retain the funds following the sale of a building, we're subject to quite significant restrictions based on how we could access them by the Ministry of Education. So it would typically be subject to or would be applicable to projects that would be more of what we would call an approval to proceed type project. So it would be a large scale addition or a pretty significant renovation. So it's not the kind of thing where we would they would fall into our capital allocation, like a facility renewal or school condition improvement, where we could immediately use those funds for sort of more routine renovations that we would do each summer. So actually, like, from a material standpoint, in terms of our ability to use them, I don't think that it's changed much yet, because it was so restrictive before. But I think probably the biggest impact we'll see is probably in the loss of interest revenue associated with the ministry holding those funds.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. McRae.
Following on those same lines, so Benson School was sold, for example. Where are those funds gone now? If they have been received by the board?
They reside in the provincial treasury. If we have approval to utilize them under the conditions that we just discussed, we would apply for that back, and essentially when it's time to pay the bills, we would get the money back.
If the bills are in a certain designated column.
Exactly.
I wouldn't mind some more clarification on that, certainly not tonight necessarily, but I'd like to have a better understanding of just where those monies do flow, and if questions of interest and a lot of other questions seem to.
Mr. Chairman, our controller would like to provide a little clarification
Through you,
as well.
Mr. Chair. The actual funds from the sale reside with the board, continue to reside with the board. The loss is that the ministry holds back some of they delay our payments on other items within the GSN in recognition of us holding on to those funds and having the interest revenue for those. So it's not that we actually send any money to the provincial treasury. We retain those funds. The impact of the interest revenue is by them delaying some of our grant payments until we use those funds first, kind of thing. So that's the mechanics, without getting too much into the.
But there are restrictions on how.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Mr. Krim.
Thank you, Chair. Would be slide 7. If I'm concerned about the 3.6, I think, deficit that we do have, but
I can't read. There we go.
And it's the word compliant I'm looking at, or the non-compliance. If I read those figures right, if we were to find another 250,000, we would then be compliant with the ministry. Even though I'm concerned about 3.6 deficit, I'm more concerned about being compliant.
That's correct.
Right? So over the next 3 months, our task is to find whether it comes into our lap through GSN or whatever, is to find 250,000. Is that the way I read that properly?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, that is correct.
I'm not quite as concerned as I was earlier. Still concerned, but.
Mr. McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is around slide 6, where you have three sections where we've gained some some savings, it looks like, in two in particular, the unallocated staffing budget and realignment of learning partners. Can I get a breakdown on how that occurred and when that occurred, and is that as a result of what would be shared in our next presentation as well?
Yes, you can. Be happy to provide that.
So I guess the clarification, is it included in the presentation later on, or is this in addition to?
No. Anything that's included in the next presentation is not included in this presentation.
Are there any further questions? Trustee Barry?
Benson School was sold. Did that report come to the board and I missed it? Through the chair?
Director?
Mr. Chair, through you, anytime that property is surplus, it's brought to the board first to confirm its declaration of surplus, which the board has to do. And as long as the property is sold at the fair market value that's established, then you give staff direction to do that. If we were not able to secure fair market value, we would bring it back to the board.
But through you, Mr. Chair, the property was sold by this board, and as a trustee, I didn't miss. If I was told and informed of this, and I missed it, that's my own fault. But properties are sold, and we don't get a report. Is that correct, Mr. Chair?
Mr. Chair, through you, that's not the board's practice. However, when a property is sold, the chairman and the local trustee is advised, because we would want to make sure that they were aware of what was happening in their local community.
And that did occur.
Okay, it's not in Dundas, so it's not directly affected as a trustee. But I was questioned about it, and I just wondered if I figured at that point. I just answered that I probably missed something, but I guess I didn't. Okay.
Just to clarify, the property was put up for sale. We approved that sale price. It was achieved at market value, therefore it did not come back to us.
I got it now.
Okay.
But, yep.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Onley and Ms. Kingston.
Thank you.
Beg your pardon?
Next report is involving both people.
Yes, okay. So we will move on to 904, which is the response to the board motion of February 27th, 2019. Yes?
May I begin?
Yes, please.
Mr. Chair, through you. As a complementary report to the financial forecast, there's an additional report this evening for trustees. Trustees will recall that a board motion was made at the February 27th meeting, asking that staff would come back with a report to provide budget improvement measures to the $1.8 million deficit that the budget passed in June of 2018 as its 18-19 budget. So the difference between this report that's going to be presented to you this evening and the previous report is a forecast of where staff believe the board's budget will land by August 31st of 2019, and then we will give you a subsequent forecast for that in June, and then we will continue to update you with the year-end financial statement in November. This is different. This came from a direct motion from the board to make an impact on the board's original budget that it passed in June of 18, and to try to reduce the $1.8 million deficit to a better state. So with that as an opening piece, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Onley and to Ms. Kingston, and we'll walk through the slide deck.
If you would permit me, trustees, I will want to participate in the debate on this particular issue, so I'm going to vacate the chair to Trustee Jacob, and because Vice Chair McPherson also wants to participate in the debate, so Trustee Jacobs, thank you.
Okay. All right. Welcome, everyone. Greetings as your chair, interim chair. So we will begin business.
So, Mr. Chair, we'll begin with the report, and then we'll open up to questions from there.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Trustees, the mission of the Upper Canada District School Board is to prepare all students for a successful life. We accomplish this with the CREW strategic plan that guides the board to improve the education and well-being of students and staff through 4 critical success factors of collaboration, resources, educational programs, and wellness. CREW allows leaders to build the capacity to meet the needs of students, staff, and community. Tonight, we focus on resources. This is the guidance that CREW provides on resources is as follows: to create an engaging learning environment, support student achievement, and sustain public confidence, we must carefully manage our resources. We are all committed to the careful management of our resources, ensuring that our students have the best possible opportunities in the future. This presentation is in response to the motion made on February 27th, 2019, that the Upper Canada District School Board direct the director to bring back a report at the end of March regarding what measures will be in place to manage expenses such that the deficit of the budget passed in May 2018 of $1.8 million will be reduced within the year. In response to the motion, the director and senior administration embarked on a collaborative and comprehensive review of all 2018-19 expense budgets with the goal of identifying any opportunities to reduce planned spending to the end of August. The opportunities were then analyzed to determine those that met the team's overarching objective of choosing expense adjustments that will not seriously impact student achievement and well-being. Guiding the budget improvement considerations is the application of a 3-part assessment framework that the senior administration has relied upon in previous budget improvement exercises. This impact assessment framework has 3 classifications, as you can see. Low impact means that there is limited impact on the provision of programs or services, and there are contingencies for addressing the loss of this resource. Medium impact means that there is a notable impact on the provision of programs and services, and in comparison to level 1, there are fewer contingencies to address the loss of this resource. Finally, high impact means that there is a wide range impact to the provision of programs and services, and there are no viable contingencies to address the loss. The team was successful in identifying several budget improvement measures that you have in your package. With the help of my colleagues around the table, if further explanation is required, they will be able to assist following the presentation. The following budget improvement measures have been assessed by senior staff as having low or limited impact for the remainder of the operational year. They are reductions in district alignment, savings related to to an unfulfilled vacancy in the business department. Savings from mid-year cancellation of purchase of lice kits for schools. Non-allocated student monitor positions. These are outstanding positions that are not filled. Reduction in international education recruitment expenses. Reduction in TR Léger school instructional supports, including supply teacher, professional development, and technology equipment costs. And finally, reductions in continuing educational instructional supports, including savings in temporary office staff, travel, and other contractual service costs. As you can see, the total of low impact considerations is $121,329. The next slide includes budget reduction considerations that have been assessed as having a medium or notable impact on the provision of programs or services. The first one is the scale back of presence at fairs and local events and trade shows. The deferral of implementation of disaster recovery business continuity infrastructure, Insight replacement project, and a deferral of all further rollout of mobile payments. The deferral of performance appraisal replacement project, the scale back of planned work on pay equity, and the reduction of professional development. We can also restrain routine maintenance of operations work and the deferral of an administrative position in facilities. And finally, there are potential savings in special education related to unfulfilled positions due to leaves of absence and vacancies. The total of medium impact considerations is $652,823. High or level 3 impact measures were examined by senior staff. At this point in the operational year, the benefits would be negligible given that there would be reduced service delivery with a high potential to adversely impact learning strategies and student achievement for the balance of the year, constraints imposed by contractual obligations, projected significant interruptions to service delivery and business support to the system. No budget improvement measures assessed as high level 3 impact are currently recommended. This is a summary of the total proposed budget improvement measures. Again, low impact measures at $121,329. Medium measures, $652,823, and the total of all budget improvement measures is $744,152. Opportunities for savings and efficiencies are monitored throughout the year. We are reviewing all discretionary hiring vacancies for the current fiscal year. Semester 2 enrollment is still a projection at this point in time and will be finalized on March 31st, 2019, and we'll have the final impact available in May. And we continue to monitor our elementary summer learning programs, ensuring that program expenses are aligned with the funding. This chart summarizes the approved budget deficit from last May 2018, and on the second line shows the proposed improvement measures. In the event the board approves the full range of budget improvement measures, the overall deficit remaining from the deficit posted in May 2018 would total $1,056,900. $53,803. The above calculation, as I might remind you, does not include financial forecast number 2. These are separate numbers, separate items, separate reports. Mr. Chair, this concludes the presentation of the 2018-19 proposed budget improvement measures. I'd again like to thank senior administration and the business department staff for their collaborative input and ongoing support in identifying the proposed measures for tonight.
Okay, thank you very much for the report. And now we're open for questions, comments. To the trustees. Trustee Donner.
Through you, Chair, of course. The 700,000, 774,000, is that in play now? Are they in place? Or are they?
These are for you to, the trustees, to select this evening.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Through you, Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
It's Trustee Swan, and I just wanted an explanation on the definition if I didn't hear it. Unallocated school supervision positions, low impact, slide 4, I think it is. Can you explain what these positions would entail?
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Chair, through you, we have, as you know, many different adults that are assigned supervision duties in schools. We have supervision monitors, or we call them SMs, and they have specific responsibilities, usually during lunchtime for supervision purposes. In our allocating of those positions, we had some staff that we didn't need to apply. We would attribute that to very careful management at the school level. However, we were retaining those resources in the event that there were any future requests. There has not been since we've allocated those resources. So these are casual employees that have up to, I think, 90 minutes at a school, 2 hours at a school maximum during the course of a school day.
Thank you. Trustee Swan, do you have any follow-up questions for that?
Yes, just a secondary. So student safety is not impacted. We just didn't need these positions because there weren't any extra needs. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, through you, that's correct. That's always a key consideration when we bring any kind of a proposal to the board.
Thank you. Trustee Swan, does that answer your questions?
Yeah, that was great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have Trustee Cram.
Thank you, Chair. 2 questions, one on the same slide and then one on slide 5. And I know it's peanuts, but the third line, cancellation of purchase of school supplies. Can you give me a concrete example of what you're looking at for canceling of school supplies?
Yes, thank you. Director?
Mr. Chair, I'll ask Superintendent Loshaw if he can comment on that.
For clarification, through you, Chair, for clarification, you're looking at the 2081?
Correct.
So, as I understand, did I hear that there was the head lice kits? So that directly is relates to the purchase of head lice kits that were purchased previously for schools.
Okay, thank you. In slide 5, the restraint in operations of and maintenance work. How, even though that may be a medium impact, can you again give us any indication of the kind of work that we'd be looking at for impacting there?
Director?
Mr. Chair, we'll ask Superintendent Hobbs to comment.
Thank you, Mr. Director. That actually is a bit of a catch-all. So the 400,000 will result in deferment, I think, of what we would consider to be routine kind of maintenance jobs that might be deferred. So this would be things like painting, like not capital projects. Would be, you know, we would probably move just routine repairs or small repairs that wouldn't be immediately noticeable into the next year, next fiscal year into September. So things that could be conducted actually during the course of a regular school year. It also includes, we've actually got a manager position that has left the organization, so we would defer the actual backfilling of that position. And we also actually carry a utility contingency as part of our sort of risk management practice when it comes to utilities. So as you know, with utilities, the drivers of utility costs like electricity and oil in some cases and gas is not just the unit cost of the utility, but it's greatly impacted by weather. So what we found is that I think we could draw down that contingency, or we're not going to need that entire contingency. So the $400,000 would be minor maintenance, like things like touching up painting here and there, and that kind of thing, and coupled with a couple of other sources of funding.
Supplemental, Mr. Chair? Supplemental question?
You have another one?
Yeah.
Okay, yes, we have a follow-up question.
Just a follow-up to that, Superintendent Hobbs. There's the old adage of pay now or pay later. If we start reducing the maintenance work, how is it going to affect, I mean, it's a little bit of asking you through your crystal ball, but if we don't do it this year and we have to do it next year, it may cost more. Can you enlighten a little bit about, because I know one of the major aspects is deferring that administrative position. So I'm not looking at that kind, I'm looking at the maintenance minor maintenance that we may be doing, what it might cost us later.
Just again through you, Mr. Chair, I would say that it won't be perceptible, and I don't think the actual increase in costs that you could potentially arise due to inflation in subsequent years will be material. I think actually, to be quite honest with you, I would be more concerned about the actual administrative position having an impact on our ability to execute and manage bodies of work than I would about this particular impact. And I think the other thing is, if you'll recall from one of my previous presentations, we do have actually still quite a large reserve of school condition capital and school renewal. So it's just quite possible that some of that maintenance work will be picked up in a subsequent year by that body of capital that we can then access with larger projects.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, it's been brought to my attention, we have a motion on the floor we would need to address. So I need a first and a second. The motion is that the Upper Canada District School Board approves the recommended budget improvement measures totaling $774,152 as presented in the report on the board on March 27, 2019. Do I have a first mover?
Mr. Chair, I should be saying this is not for the purposes of calling a vote. Its purpose is to continue the dialogue, and then the motion will be called at a later point in the dialogue.
Tonight?
Correct.
With that corollary, Chair, I would move it so the debate can continue. Not necessarily that I agree with it, but if it needs to be debate continued, I'll move it.
Trustee Cram moves it.
Do you have a seconder?
Do I have a seconder? Trustee McAllister. Thank you.
I'll second it so the debate can continue. Not in favor necessarily either.
Thank you.
So then the dialogue will continue, Mr. Chairman.
And now we can continue the dialogue. Is there any other questions from the trustees? Trustee McPherson?
I might as well step up to the plate. I'm a little confused about this motion because that is not listed as an action item on our agenda, but I will proceed. Okay. I do not like the words defer, scale back, unallocated, I can go with. But one of the things that bothers me about this whole thing is, as trustees, we need to lead by example. I see nothing in here or even any consideration of the governance line of our budget. My litmus test for a board meeting is going out of this room with a positive impact on public education. Some of these things are going to have a pretty negative impact on education, especially when I look at $109,000 out of the spec ed line. I know spec ed's a personal personal favorite of mine, but if we have an unfilled position, it means there's a child somewhere not getting support. So I would like to see at least a consideration of the governance line for potential savings, whether we restrain our out-of-board travel or something along those lines. I've looked at the numbers and they're not huge, but then again, you're taking $2,081 out of the budget for head licenses. So if the trustees can reduce their budget by $2,000, $4,500, that at least would show that we are leading by example. So as this is presented, I'm not prepared to support it tonight, I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other comments or questions? Trustee McDonald.
Thank you. My question is around slide 6. It's the high impact slide. So you've indicated that high level impact measures were examined by senior staff. However, at this point, the operationally and tangible benefits would be negligible. So I can appreciate the fact that there's discussion and that they would have an opportunity for input, but when it comes to budget, it is the board's decision. And I think it would be incumbent upon senior staff and the director at least to present us with the options, and we can make a decision at that point. So my question would be, what are those high-level impact measures that would have been identified as range 3 or level 3?
Okay, thank you. Director?
Mr. Chair, one that comes immediate to mind would be the postponement of summer learning, the summer semester and summer learning. Now, some of that is funded, some of it is not. And so that would be, from the staff perspective, an example of what would have an impact to students and to, I think, our annual commitment to students during the summer semester.
Thank you. Trustee McDonald?
Okay, so if I'm correct, you said it is funded. So when we do have students sign up, we get funding for the delivery of that. So what's the overall cost of running summer education then?
Mr. Chair, I don't have that information at this time, but we can get that.
Okay. It's not really important to this discussion, I guess, for tonight. So I want to go back. May I, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I want to go back to slide 4, sorry. I guess 4 and 5. So of slide 4 and 5, when I look at that, those breakdowns, can someone tell me what areas or what lines of our budget, our funding and expenses do those come from? Do any of those come from board administration lines or director, supervisory officer lines?
Mr. Chair, I'll ask our finance staff to comment.
Through you, Mr. Chair. The unfilled vacancy on slide 4 there in the business department would be funded out of school business administration envelope. Sorry.
And then,
Can I ask if my privilege, please?
Yes.
Diana, can you just speak up a little
yes,
louder?
My apologies. Yeah, I have my new novice at the table here. My apologies. So the second line in the low impact, the business department unfilled vacancy for $40,543, that would be funded out of the business the administration and governance envelope, as well as on the on slide 5. Good evening.
Yeah.
Oh. The human resources slide, the line 3. The $15,000 there also would be under the admin and governance line funding.
Okay. Trustee McDonald?
Thank you. So that is about $55,000 out of a total budget of 7.2 or 7.3 million. in board administration, and the rest, would they come from, I'm assuming the 430 and the 109 come from school operation or people accommodation?
A variety of sources. Definitely the facilities department would be coming from school operations, and then all others would come from a variety of other GSN sources. The last line on the special education would come from special education funding envelope, presumably.
Thank you. Just my final point then, Mr. Chair. I'm supportive of the measures that are before us. I am disappointed that we didn't see opportunities for reductions within some specific line areas. When I look at the financial forecast or the financial results of January 31st, I think is when it was last presented to us, those numbers, most of our budgets were on par with about 60% or so unspent, and so there's an opportunity that if we change course, that there's potentially an opportunity to find some savings. However, I think the 750,000 or 770,000 will certainly put us in a better position than where we were a couple of months ago, and I'm appreciative of the work that's gone into to help achieve this. And I think even though some things will be postponed, deferred, unfilled for a short period of time, I think it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we do those things to help get us into a position where we are at least compliant. We still have some work to do around trying to get out of a deficit situation altogether, but at least we would be compliant with these measures. So I appreciate the work and thankful for what we've got.
Thank you. Trustee McAllister.
Thank you very much, Chair. We started out in May of last year passing a budget which had a 1.8 million deficit. With these in-year deferrals or rollbacks, etc., we will have remaining 1.0 million. Which, and I agree with Trustee McDonald that this was a significant measure, considering that it was in-year savings, because those are the hardest ones to find sometimes. I think what this demonstrates, though, is that there is a commitment by the Board of Trustees and administration to have a second go at this, which would be in the budget for this coming year. And that would be an opportunity for us to perhaps go deeper and delve further into this issue. So I do appreciate this very much. I have a question with regard to slide 5, scale back board presence at community events. This is not a significant savings, and I think this was an innovative approach. I think this was our second year at participating in community events, whether it be fairs or markets, etc. And I think it went a long way to build public confidence in public education and to promote the board, and more especially to promote the local school. I would ask that that issue be either eliminated or reduced substantially. Yes, so therefore, Chair, if I might, I would like to move an amendment that the first line, scale back board presence at community events in the amount of $8,072 be removed from that total.
Okay. So the amendment that So if I'm not mistaken, first and second. You need to get a seconder.
Move it, second, and vote on the amendment. Then you vote on the main motion.
Resulting in a total.
These reductions in international. The last 3 lines of TR legend.
I would assume it would mean. Okay, we're just preparing the motion to amend the entire thing. Yep. Please.
Through you, Chair.
Okay, I have a question on the line.
Yes, are we going to go through this line by line then on what we'd like removed? Because then there's probably a couple subject lines that I'd like to recommend removed, like the special education line.
Okay, Trustee Swan, it is a great question.
I think,
Director?
Mr. Chair, you have an amendment on the floor that you have to dispose of. So
Yes.
I think you have to take a vote now based on what you have and see if there's any subsequent requests that way. Then we would just repeat the process.
Okay, so
No.
take a vote on the
On your amendment, first of all.
so first and second.
That's right.
Okay.
Speak to the amendment.
So you've got first and second there already.
Okay.
Just to get you through the board.
So I need to find out.
Sorry. I'm seconder right now. So it was moved by Mr. McAllister, and you need to know if there's a seconder to that amendment.
Okay, yes. I have a motion to amend moved by Trustee McAllister. Is there a second to amend the motion? Trustee Donner has second.
No, we have to ask people to vote on that.
And now we will put the vote online.
For that amendment.
For the amendment.
May not speak to.
Or sorry, before we vote online, we would open the floor to questions. Trustee McPherson.
Following up from what Trustee Swan said, if we start doing this line by line, I see 3 or 4 that I would like to see removed because it deals with some of our most vulnerable students. And these savings that I see in front of me do not reflect a full year of costs. It reflects what's left in the balance of this year. There's 3 lines in reference to TR Leger, as well there's another line for special education. So I caution if we start doing this thing line by line.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Barry.
Would someone through the chair, would someone enlighten me on what the IT projects might be, $90,000?
Director?
Mr. Chair, through you, we'll ask Mr. Hobbs if he can comment.
Yeah, so every year we have a number of projects that we plan. So some of them are new capabilities and some of them are replacements or upgrades to existing capabilities. In this particular case, we have a disaster recovery and business continuity project, which essentially is a backup and recovery system for some of our critical systems that run things like payroll and our financials. And so that project will be deferred into the next fiscal year, pending budget availability. So it would be around the purchase and implementation of the infrastructure that would be required to provide that, to update that capability.
Okay, Trustee Barry, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So before we move on, I'd like to get back to the motion that was first and seconded about the amendment to the motion that needs to be addressed. And before we go on discussing whether we go through line by line, we need to address that first. Trustee Cram?
Thank you, Chair. I think it's a combination of all sorts of things what I wanted to mention. I share the concern about going by line. I've been involved with boards that do go line by line, and it takes forever to do a budget. However, I'm caught because one of our main goals and one of our main objectives and governance issues is budget. And in the 5 years now that I've been involved with the board, I've never seen a discussion on particular items in a budget to see where people's priorities are. So I'm intrigued with the process. I like the process we're going on, but I share the caution that Trustee McPherson and Trustee McDonald have put forward on going line by line. But I just don't want to stop the debate because of that particular issue, that's all.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Kadra, Student Trustee Kadra, did you have a question or comment? Oh, okay. Okay, so is there any other questions or comments to the amendment to the motion?
Trustee Swan?
Yes.
And I have a concern. If we vote on this, are we still voting on the whole motion? Because I, like Trustee McPherson, have some big concerns about the TR Leger line and the special education line, because especially not to keep positions due to leave of absences and vacancies and for a savings of $109,000 when we're welcoming, due to the government decisions, we may have a lot of autistic children entering our schools, and I think we're going to need to fill those positions, not only to support the children that are already there, but to support the new students that could be arriving shortly. So I'm very concerned about not filling those positions now. And the other one I'm really concerned about is reductions in continuing education instructional supports, because of the fact the government's wanting our grade 9 to 12 to take 4 online courses, and I think that support's very much needed for them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comment. Is there any other comments or questions to the amendment to the motion?
Hi, sorry, this is Trustee Petty-Yang.
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, sorry, I just had one sort of financial related question, potentially. I know because we're looking at all of these things line by line, or there's a potential debate. Are we able to find out, obviously the special education one seems to be of highlight, but have the superintendents or the governing bodies that have this file, have they really looked at, like, are we really taking away, or are we just not using money that we were sort of keeping on the side because potentially we may need it? Are we actually affecting students that won't now have an EA with them, or are we just potentially, okay, well, we were saving this, now we're no longer going to need it?
Okay, Director, can you clarify?
Mr. Chair, through you, any of the budget improvement measures that are presented that have a human resources connection to it, we believe that we have a contingency that would not disadvantage students or disadvantage our business practices. We do recognize that it's not the same as having the resources available. Sometimes what's been presented is that we've had difficulty filling those spaces, and so we've had the contingency in place for quite some time. Some of the staff that's presented there in the special education line is an excellent example of that. And you know, that we've had to make other amends to address those needs when we couldn't fill a position. It's not related to educational assistance. It's not related to what I heard the previous trustee mention about students with autism. It has nothing to do with their program commitments per se. But I do want to make sure that we're clear that we, in any given operational year, we may have human resource assignments that are unfilled. We would rather have them filled, but at this point in the operational year, with 3 months left in the school year and 5 months left in the operational year, we've obviously made some efforts to bridge that gap.
Thank you. Trustee Partizan, does that answer your questions?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, is there any other comments or questions to the amendment to the motion? Okay, with no more that I see, we will put the motion to a vote.
The amendment to a vote.
The amendment to a vote. So, do I read it again?
Can you read it again to us?
Yes. Okay. So the motion to amend that the Upper Canada District School Board approves the recommended budget improvement measures totaling $774,152 as presented in the report to the board on March 27th, with the removal of $8,072 from measures for consideration medium to impact, resulting in a total of $766,080.
Point of clarification, Chair.
Yes.
That doesn't separate the two of them. That defeats both of them or accepts both of them at the same time. It was an amendment just to remove the $8,072. And then you can vote yay or nay, and then you're back to the $774,000 as it is. But I have a problem with the wording as was just presented.
Okay, thank you for bringing that up. I'm sure we can clarify that to...
Sorry, medium measure number 2.
Oh, we have a question. Trustee McAllister?
Point of clarification.
Okay.
I agree with Trustee Cram. The intent was to just have the amendment and either defeat it or accept it, and then move on to the main motion.
The motion. So I would just read the amendment.
So we need an amendment about reducing, Lisa's just making a change there, about reducing that amount. And then
A procedural question then, if we have a second amendment, do we bring it after this one's voted on?
Trustee Swan, I will address that right after we clarify the amendment to the motion.
Thank you, Chair.
Federal government.
Phoenix.
Yes. This is the motion. Yes. Do I address your question, or will take care of this first? Actually,
first to see if
yes,
addresses the issue.
Okay. So I have the motion to amend. Thank you, Trustee Cram, for the clarification on the motion to amend. The motion to amend that the Upper Canada District School Board approves the removal of $8,072 within the Communications Department line from measures for consideration medium impact 2. Do I have, or now it's to a vote. So cast your vote, please.
I'm voting in favor, Chair, because I don't have my computer with me.
Oh, yes. I'm in favor, or just wait?
That's right, and you can vote too. We can just say.
The only one
Not up.
Does yours come up, Liz?
Yeah.
Does yours come up, Liz?
We still have.
Switch back to the home screen.
Okay.
Does yours come up?
Okay, Trustee Graham, you're opposed. Thank you.
Okay, for yourself.
Well, I don't vote until it's.
You can choose to.
Now it's up.
And then you should. 6 opposed, 3-4, so the amendment was defeated.
Okay, so the amendment was defeated.
So we're back to the regular motion.
So now we are back to the original motion.
And you have
And I have actually, 1 second, I have Trustee Swan had a question.
But I would like to make an amendment again.
We will address that.
Trustee Swan speaks.
Okay, Trustee Swan, we've taken care of the amendment to the motion. We are back to the original motion, and you now have the floor.
Well, I was just going to say that I would like to remove the savings related to unfilled positions due to leave of absences and vacancies in the special education budget. I'm very concerned about this. As trustees, I think all of us get calls on special education and the supports needed in the classroom, and I just think this is a very vulnerable population of our student population that we need to not remove this extra funding from the budget. And we need to fill these positions if we can. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comment. I have Trustee McPherson.
I'd like to.
There's a motion or an amendment there.
Well, she has a motion, then we need a seconder before we can speak on that, and that's what's going to take precedence right now.
Oh,
so we have.
My apologies, Trustee Swan. I missed your motion.
So we put it in here.
To remove the $109,751 savings related to unfilled positions due to leave of absences and vacancies from the special education budget.
So you can read that out and let's see the second.
Okay, so I have a motion to amend that the Upper Canada District School Board approves a removal of $109,751 within the special education line from measures for consideration medium to impact. Do I have a seconder?
Do you need a seconder for discussion?
Yes.
I'll second it for discussion.
Seconded by Trustee McPherson, and this amendment to the motion is open for discussion. Trustee McPherson.
Doing some quick math here and not wanting to pick on Jeremy too bad, my suggestion would have been that we simply go after the hard cuts, the ones that are in services and facilities, and leave the human resource ones to the discretion of the various superintendents. That if you have a job position that you think need filled, you will fill it. If you can get to the end of the year without filling it, don't fill it. In farming, when you get your toes pinched financially, you quit buying the things, you stretch your maintenance a wee bit. Maybe you don't buy any new hardware, but you keep the basic business alive. Our basic business at this table is students and children. And I'm sorry, when you start walking into anything that has to do with human resources and delivery in the classroom, I have a problem with that, even if there's only 3 months to go. And so my suggestion is our totals, we stuck to the hardware, so to speak, would be $535,000, and we would save $139,000 that would not go towards the deficit. And that's just my opinion. But we do have a motion on the table.
Okay. Just, point of order here. If we're going to speak, we have to speak about the 109,000. We're not speaking about the whole item right now. We're speaking about the 109,000 only. Only.
Thank you very much for the point of order. And now, Trustee Barry.
Through you, Chair, I think you're doing a pretty good job. Savings related to on-field positions due to leaves of absence and vacancies. Does that not apply to a directive from the Ministry of Education that said that you cannot hire at this point? May I ask that question, please, through the chair?
Director.
Mr. Chair, through you, we have heard from the Ministry of Education advice about hiring restraint for any kind of discretionary positions. There's no direction, although the ministry's memo was encouraging boards to follow their lead that they had initiated with the Greater Public Service. So as a result, board members know that staff have been carefully reviewing any kinds of requests for staffing to determine whether it was discretionary or and that discretionary was actually operation critical, or whether or not we had contingencies. I think there are some examples of this in the improvement measures that are brought forward here, but we're also aware of having a process of, as a staff, of saying what is the impact, and will it in fact impact student participation in their program or their safety or their success. So we believe as a staff anything that is listed there would not fall into those concerns.
Thank you. Trustee Barry, does that?
I think that does it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Student Trustee Kadra.
Through you, Chair. Earlier in the discussion, the director mentioned that these funds, the 109,000, are not related to educational assistance or the autism funding. Or I was wondering if you could provide some further clarification on that, like as to where these numbers do come from. I believe this may have already been touched on, and it might just be a question that's being asked again.
Thank you. Director?
Mr. Chair, through you, it's a good question. So the Special Education Department is very elaborate. There's a mix of paraprofessionals and professionals, teachers, people who are part of the allied health professions like psychologists. So it's quite a range of staff who are part of that work, school attendance counselors, a wide range. We selected what we had was positions where there were leaves or they were unfilled and we couldn't fill them. And so again, I would want to come back to the point that at this point in the operational year, where we're more than 3/4 of the way through, we found ways to provide either support or to attend to student needs in the absence of those positions. So what we're really bringing to the board here is sort of a reality check where we are in the last quarter of the school year, and recognizing that we would have loved to fill those positions earlier. We don't believe that based on what's happened from September to February that we're going to see movement there. So we believe that that would be a reasonable budget measure to present to the board, because it would have some impact because we're not being able to do the full range of work that we were anticipating, but we've been managing that since September.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we are still addressing the amendment to the motion. Is there any other questions or comments?
Through you, Chair. It's Trustee Swan.
Trustee Swan, go ahead.
And I guess I want to clarify, because the director said these numbers were up till February. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, that's correct.
Thank you.
So, and in February, even though you said it didn't have to do with the number of autistic children being introduced into our school systems, that announcement wasn't made till just recently, and I'm very concerned if we put this out, we may find ourselves in a position to need new supports in our schools. And how would that affect this $109,000 if we keep it in this removal from, or sorry, in the budget that's going to save us money?
Director?
Mr. Chair, through you, as you can imagine, we've been following the developments in the public domain very closely. Been doing our analysis. I believe there was an update provided to the board about how we're trying to track what we might understand is the potential impact of changes in funding in therapeutic services for families and how that might play out to the board. There's been some game changers recently, a recent announcement by the province about having a protracted timeline for possibly changing those funding periods, have meant that in our most recent conversation with our spec ed staff that we know that families are reconsidering whether or not they're thinking about joining our school system as of April 1. I do want to reiterate, though, that the positions that are unfilled would not necessarily have any direct implication for receiving new students if those students had autism. We do recognize that sometimes people see special education resources as being very generic. However, the department is very specialized, and we have to assign different kinds of expertise to different kinds of student needs. And as far as we understand it today, we don't believe that has any direct implications with any students who may be joining us in the near future who may fall within the impact from the changes in government support to children with therapeutic support for autism.
Thank you. Trustee Swan, does that answer your questions?
Yes, it does. And just a comment on that, because I was on the board website today, and I noticed we have an unfilled position for someone with sign language skills, for example. And I don't know if that's because there's no one out there that's applying, no one qualified, or they're working elsewhere. But I guess my concern, and the reason I want this out there, is there's so many children in our board with special needs, and I think we can always use more staff to support them in these positions. I know that this is an administrative move, but I just think I want the funding to be there for these positions till the end of June. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And moving down the list, Trustee McDonald.
Thank you. I want to pick up on what the director said and really focus on, the fact that we want to save $109,000 because we're afraid we may get an influx of children, we may have something. That happens no matter what. Whether we're facing a budget crisis or not, or whether we're in the black and we have all kinds of money, we could get an influx of kids at any point. And the beauty of our system is that we find the resources and the ability to service those kids. So by removing $109,000 and finding these savings of $774,000, we're not saying that we're not going to take any more kids. We're not saying we're not going to teach any more kids. We're not saying we're going to do anything different. A little bit different, I guess, perhaps from a staffing level standpoint. But from an education delivery standpoint, we're not going to do anything different. We're going to find a way to continue to do the things that we've always done and meet the needs of our kids. What we are doing by having the $109,000 in there allows us to have an accumulated $774,000, allows us to stop, take a pause on some things so that we can find those savings to help eliminate or alleviate our deficit. So it's important, and I think that the $109,000 needs to remain, as does other things, to make sure that we are achieving the goal that we set out to try and find the $1.8 million.
Thank you. We are still on the motion to amend. Is there any other comments or questions? Okay, so in moving forward, we are going to call a vote. So read the motion again, Mr. Chair. Keep me on that. Okay, the motion to amend that the Upper Canada District School Board approves the removal of $109,751 within the special education line from measures for consideration medium to impacts. You can cast your votes. Okay, so the motion was defeated.
Sorry, one vote. Mr. McAllister.
Trustee McAllister, your vote?
Opposed.
Okay.
So the motion was defeated.
The motion is defeated. So back to the main motion.
Mr. Chair?
Oh, sorry, Trustee McDonald?
So I want to speak about the main motion and the requirement for us to find some savings and the $774,000. And I asked the question in the previous presentation about the, I'm going to find the right slide, about the findings that were on page 6 of the previous presentation. There were significant findings, so $800,000 in staff budget, realignment of learning partners, and then $300,000 from a liability of Sun Life. So a $1.1 million difference, a gain, right?
Yes.
Then we've got $775,000 that we're going to find through budget process. So we've realized that we passed the budget in May of 2018 with a $1.8 million deficit. If we pass this motion tonight, we have regained the $1.8 million of a deficit budget that we had passed last May. And I think that's an important piece for us to recognize, and it's an important piece for us to have when we are having further discussions with the ministry, that even though we passed it, we had work that was progressing through the course of the year to an attempt to find it. We did find it, and I think that will speak volumes for the work that we're going to do to find the other 4 million or whatever it is that we need to find to help us with some of the transportation pieces. So keep in mind that $774,000 coupled with the 1.1, we are now 1.8 million. It's actually $40-some thousand to the good.
Okay, thank you. Trustee McRae?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, this is the first time I've seen this. I'm not prepared to act in haste on something until I have gathered more wisdom from the people in this room. There may become an opportunity this weekend coming, but this is the first time I've seen this. And what I haven't seen, I've been here for 4 months, but I do expect that budgeting is one of the more, if not the most important thing that we do. But I haven't seen a line-by-line breakdown on how we spend our money. That would help me immensely in making decisions on which department is in, who the personnel affected. But mostly, and the point I want to emphasize, for me, I need to differentiate between money that's being spent in school that directly, on a daily basis, affects students, and dollars being spent that might be categorized as indirect. That's what I have to say.
Thank you. Is there any other comments or questions? Trustee Cram?
Through you, Chair.
Go ahead, Trustee Swan. Trustee Cram, you're next.
Okay. I have a question in regards to reductions in continuing educational instructional supports. Will this affect students over the summer? Or will this be in next year's budget?
Director?
Mr. Chair, through you, I don't believe that's the case, but I'll ask Superintendent Rudders to comment.
Through you, Chair. So anything related to continuing education supports in that line that it indicates $15,000 are kind of a number of pieces that are not directly related to summer semester in any way, shape, or form, or related to specifically the classroom. Some of that was, for example, temporary support within the administrative side with regards to Tir Leger, some of the travel that we estimated for that we no longer need, some PD opportunity that instead of involving travel to a specific location allowed us to go to a Skype set up instead. So there's no impact specifically to summer semester or directly to the classroom and student instruction.
A secondary, please?
Yes.
Could you please further that comment in regards to school instructional supports, the other 15,000?
Yes.
Okay, so in terms of the school instructional supports, some of that, again, piecemeal, a lot of pieces to this. Some of it was refurbishment of some technology equipment that we felt that we could defer, and as well some estimates with regards to needs around supply costs, supply teacher, supply IA costs, that we're simply not recognizing the level of need that we might have predicted with regards to the money we budgeted for that purpose. There was also some money in that directly related to PD, and as I mentioned before, that was the difference between doing some PD on site using some Skype opportunity rather than collectively bringing people together and the costs associated with that.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have Trustee Cram next.
Thank you, Chair, because we're back on the main motion, right?
Yes.
And I just find myself in a little bit of a dilemma here because I can't make an amendment to the main motion that I moved. So it's just a comment that I would hopefully that Trustee McAllister, in his role as chair, when he does go back to being role as chair, consider something that Trustee McPherson had said earlier, and perhaps it is time that trustees looked at the administrative budget for trustees and can at least make some sort of a public statement at some point of savings that could be found in the trustee budget to go along with cuts to the other departments that may be occurring.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, I have Trustee Schooler.
Through you, Chair, I would just like to thank the staff for taking the time and making the effort to look at all of these ways that they could save the board money. And I would like to acknowledge the fact that they're on the same page really as we are. They're not interested in making cuts that are going to directly affect children. And that's been expressed in response to the questions that we've had. And so, again, I just want to support and to acknowledge that they have had that in mind when they've looked at how to save money.
Thank you for your comments. Is there any other questions or comments to the main motion?
Call the question, Chair, please.
Question. Question has been called. That the Upper Canada District School Board approves the recommended budget improvement measures totaling $774,152 as presented in the report to the board on March 27th, 2019. Do I... Wait, it's a vote.
Confirming the mover and seconder. The mover
I
was
confirmed the
Mr.
mover.
Cram.
Donald Cram was the mover.
And the seconder was Mr. McAllister.
And seconder was Trustee McAllister. And your votes are available. Mr. McAllister, your vote has not come through
I'm
yet.
in favor.
In favor.
I had to log off, I guess, and log in again.
I thought I only vote. The chair only votes if it's a tie.
Yeah, would you please?
Motion carries.
Indeed, that is
It's not even- it's not even-
No offense.
Seven. 6, 7. So it's
According to our bylaws, you can vote.
Thank you. Okay, the motion carries 7-3.
So next, I think it's turning the chair or turning it back to the
Okay. Okay, so thank you for your time and patience in our issue. So I thank you for having me.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was fun. I sure know when to leave and when to come. So, we are moving on to the report of the Ontario Public School Board Association. Trustee McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The report is very brief tonight. It's just an opportunity for discussion around any comments that trustees may have around changes to OPSPA's constitution and our policies. The policy document and constitution were part of the package at the last meeting, and certainly were attached to this meeting. I'll just go over a real quick highlight of what the purpose of it is. That any policy resolutions are from member boards. They have to be solidified by the corporate board, so a motion passed to support it by the corporate board. Those motions then move forward and go to the board of directors meeting. It's the first weekend in May, and get some more, I guess, review, for lack of a better term. If everything passed the discussion at the executive and the board of directors, that moves on to the annual general meeting for a vote of the full assembly. The AGM is being held the 4th of July in Toronto. The documents that are before you really just frame the process for what would happen. Policy resolutions must be provincial scope in manner. So if you're putting something in place that only has an impact to a particular board, it probably won't get support. So they want to make sure that you're putting something in place that has an impact for all of education, but at a minimum, all of English public education, because this is what OPSPA is for. Again, if we put any constitutional amendments in place, those are there to kind of drive our housekeeping process and making sure that we're conducting ourselves in a formal manner and doing what's required, following our own procedures. Last September, I will just highlight, last September there was an initiation for a governance review committee. So there will be work coming out of that eventually, and we'll see some of those. We may even see some of those this year in new resolutions coming forward. So I really don't have any more to say. I don't have anything in particular that's a burning issue for me, but I wanted to provide trustees an opportunity to discuss it if there was something, or even just question whether something could potentially be looked at in the future. And even from a process standpoint about providing input for OPSPA. I can also indicate that in 3 weeks or so, I think it's the 13th of April, there's a regional meeting, and generally through it's the 13th? Saturday. I think it's the 13th.
13th is Saturday.
Generally through the regional meetings, there's an opportunity for trustees to provide input and help frame some of the discussions around issues that might be important to Eastern Ontario, which is Hastings, Prince Edward to the Quebec border. And then have that go back through Executive Council and have some discussion. So things get filtered through regional up into Executive and Board of Directors if there are any particular issues that we need to address from time to time. So I'll leave it if there's any questions about process or how things might move forward.
Trustee Barry?
I have a question to the chair. the policy in regards to overnight trips that OPSPA is advising boards to adopt is very, very restrictive and pretty well puts an end to overnight trips because it makes it cost so much. So if I would like to try to have that changed, I first have to get my board to approve that change and then it goes there, or how does that work?
So it would be a policy resolution then, I'm not familiar with the policy, to be quite honest. I will look into that though.
It's overnight trips.
I'll have to research the stuff for OPSPA.
Okay.
But certainly if that's the case, then certainly we can do that. And put something in place that would I guess address the issue that you're looking to address. Or we could also have it, if it's not a policy itself, then we could also incorporate it into other discussion at Board of Directors too. But if it's something that can be done as a policy, then we can certainly have that changed or have it move forward.
But through the chair, to go to OPSPA, does it have to be the policy change that I'd be requesting? Does it have to come to this board first?
So it depends on what we're trying to do. So if it's a policy resolution, which again it addresses key areas around OPSPA priorities, then yes, it would go that way. If it's something that a directive that OPSPA was put out, and it's not necessarily a policy, and it's a reconsideration of a directive, then it wouldn't have to go through that process.
Okay, we'll talk about that.
Trustee McRae.
Thank you. David, when is that regional meeting and where? It's 13th.
13th.
On Saturday, where?
In Ottawa, and they haven't.
Gloucester High School.
Did they confirm it though? Yeah. Gloucester High School. I know they were wanting to do it, but they hadn't confirmed.
What time is it? Or is there some online place I can get the? Yeah.
There's going to be an email come out, and typically whenever that email comes out, you just let them know that you're attending so that they can count numbers. But typically it's around 10 to 3.
Okay. Thank you.
And the session, depending on the school, but we often have an ability to see a facility if it's in a school. But we will potentially also have a pretty full agenda because we are leading up into a Board of Directors meeting and the AGM. So it'll be pretty full, and it'll be good for trustees. Because the only other regional meeting you would have seen was going to be would have been at PEZ. And it's a very condensed meeting. It's about 45 minutes to an hour. These ones are a little bit more extended.
So I think if I hear you correctly, it will be a full agenda. So probably going there to listen for somebody who's a trustee which is fine and dandy.
Yeah, I don't want you to think you're just coming to listen. There's certainly an opportunity for input. I'm just indicating that it's full in the sense that there's not a lot of time for leisure.
Fair enough.
It's a quick lunch and we're back to it.
Fair enough. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Trustee Cram?
Thank you, Chair. Just to add to Trustee McDonald's report, there is an educational work team meeting on Friday of this week, which I am unable to attend because I have a board meeting to attend on Friday, as well as our own conference in Marsburg. But some of the highlights of what will be discussed at the educational work team is the new math curriculum that has just been announced a little bit. The issue of the math content knowledge that our teachers are now going to have to engage in. The e-learning announcement that the ministry has said regarding the 4 courses that will need to be done. The FSL labor market partnership that we're trying to do, and also the legislative review of the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disability Act. So that will be done on Friday. From there should be a report coming back to me. I know our alternate Lucille Kyle from Hastings Prince Edward is attending in my spot. And Lucille will be at the meeting on the 13th as well, so she will be able to give you an oral update from that. And I'll also send out the minutes that happen from this meeting to everybody as soon as they come out from OPSPA.
Thank you. I might add, if I could, from the policy work group, we had a teleconference call today, and we addressed such issues as Bill 48 and Bill 66 and the B8 and B9 memos, which deal in detail with the various issues that Trustee Cram referred to. Yeah, so that's about it. Anything else? Moving on then to 11.02, Director of Education. No, 11.01, Director's Award of Merit.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, this is great news for our board because it's a very concrete action that came out of the school climate survey data, and then from this table, direction about creating a merit award process that help to address and acknowledge the great contribution that our staff make to students and the smooth operation of our business functions in our board. And so I'm very pleased to bring to you the results out of this most recent nomination process. We had an unprecedented 114 nominations, which is threefold than our last time that we asked for nominations. And another really interesting tidbit here is that more than a third of the nominations that we received came from the general public. So that's parents and ratepayers, some of our students, and I think that's even far beyond our expectations that we thought that this award of merit would actually be in-house driven, but now we have people external to the organization that are participating and telling us just how great our employees are. And I think it's really a moment of pride for us. So we have 6 recipients. That was a very difficult task through our dialogue at the senior staff table of trying to take 114 really great contributors and to bring it down to a number of 6. First off is Beth Moynihan, who is an LRT at Viscount Alexander Public School. And Beth was recognized by our nominator as someone who is always willing to help colleagues, whether team teaching, mentoring, answering questions about IEPs, finding resources. She's a huge advocate for collaboration at her school, and she creates meaningful relationships with all Viscount students. The nomination was so glowing that was about a page and a half, and those are the highlights. But it says, just as a great example, I think, of what people envisioned about how to honor a staff member who has made that kind of commitment and meets the criteria of the award of merit, which is about people who really have made a difference, that in their absence we would recognize that disconnect or loss of their contribution. Our second recipient is a posthumous award for the late Carol McEwen. Now, Carol, many people knew Carol around this table and really know that how deeply valued she was, how deeply respected she is, and how dearly missed she is right now. The wonderful tribute to Carol in her nomination was Carol was the matriarch of our work family, and that's from the finance department. She was responsible for collaborative setting that you see today in that business department. She had an incredible knack for making sure everyone was included and truly appreciated. Her characteristics inspire others to continuously work towards improving themselves and improving their work. And also, the nomination spoke to not only Carol's valued contributions in this office and at this table, but also in the community, where she was highly regarded for her volunteer work in the community, and just a wonderful colleague. And it's no surprise to us as a senior team that this nomination came forward. Next, we had Emily Reevy, who is a French teacher at Front of Young. And Emily's nomination advised that she strives to bring her very best to the Front of Young school every day and effectively makes use of a variety of materials to keep students learning and engaged. She creates her lessons in a way that provides all students an access point and often uses hands-on experiences. And then there were some student testimonials as part of that nomination that was really quite exciting, that students talked about how they were engaged, and they felt that Madame was able to create learning experiences that were geared right where they were as learners, and that they got to do hands-on activities as well as writing. So we really are, feeling very proud about having someone like Madame Reevy, who's working at Front of Young. Next, we have Heather Grant, and Heather is a student success teacher and English teacher at Charland District High School. And Heather's nominator said that she works tirelessly in her role as a student success teacher to make sure that students are successful in their courses. She develops strong communication with parents and shows a high level of commitment and care to all the students that she supports. She also runs the Green Team at Charland, which is a really neat initiative at that school, which is about maintaining a growing wall. You have to see it to believe it. It's really quite exciting what's there. Her nominator also had attributed to Heather her professionalism and hard work, and her supportive nature has really made a difference at the school. Our two last nominations that we identified as recipients for this round of awards is Marcia McNair, and Marcia is the principal at Smiths Falls District Collegiate Institute. And it says, the nomination says that Marcia leads with character and puts students at the center of everything she does. And anybody who knows Marcia's work would certainly agree with that. It's very true. Principal McNair is exceptional at developing her staff in a way that is respectful and caring while having high expectations. She does this by inspiring her staff at SFDCI to be learners first and encouraging them to be innovative and collaborative. And there's a list of different initiatives, close to a dozen, I should say, of what her nominator has specifically attributed Ms. McNair's leadership to. And then lastly, we have Megan Chouinard from Nation View Public School. And what we hear is that Megan is an exemplary teacher as she programs individually for the needs of her students. She has high expectations for her children. She carefully scaffolds their learning for success. Her focus on the social emotional strategies has created an environment that is safe and secure for children to learn. The nomination goes on for about 2 pages with evidence about how this teacher is making a difference at the school for her students and for other students. So, Mr. Chair, it's my pleasure to have brought that to you this evening. These recipients, as well as the recipients who have been identified in earlier reports, will be part of our awards celebration at the end of the year, and we also hope that all trustees can join us at that important event, and we'll make sure that we flag the date for you in your calendars. So I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you very much, Director, and on behalf of the board, I'd like to extend our sincere congratulations to the recipients, and we look forward to meeting them personally in May at the award ceremony. I'd like to move on to 1102, which is the Director of Education's Work Plan and Status Reports, number 2, March 2019.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, we have our second report to the board. As you know, we have multiple status updates to keep the board members informed that the progress of the work is ongoing and we're making inroads. I hope that you saw from the landing page report that out of the 13 separate actions that are part of what we're bringing to you tonight, 11 are already progressing, one's been achieved, and one will be on its way. I'm just going to ask if Ms. Workman could help to provide you with the paper copies that you can look at your leisure while we go through tonight's presentation. First off is the reason why we have the work plan is that the work plan fits into the board's strategic plan, and the board's strategic plan is enabling and meeting the mission that the board has about preparing all students for a successful life. What I'd like to do, Mr. Chair, through this report tonight is just to update you on the goals as they are or as they've been addressed. And secondly, Ms. Workman will pass over to me the the remote there, I think, if it's nearby. And an opportunity to make sure that the members of the board know that what we're speaking to tonight comes through this specific plan. We also are going to have two highlights to focus on that falls within this plan. Mr. Coombs and Mr. Dawes will speak to goal number 1 about our journey to address the 90% graduation goal that the board has set. And we'll ask Mr. Ferguson to talk in a brief moment about the focus on well-being and what we're doing in terms of school well-being plans. Just as a very high-level overview, out of those 13 distinct actions, to let you know that in the progress of those goals is very significant, and to let you know that in goal number 1, that all actions assigned to that goal are well on their way. And so why we share that with you is that we have every confidence that they'll be achieved by the end of this particular work plan. Goal number 2, not only are the actions progressing, that one has been already fully accomplished or achieved. And this particular goal, goal number 2, is significant because it is about ensuring that our staff are engaged and that we're providing them with opportunities to participate in the discussion about what are our goals and our ambitions as a senior team as we carry out the will and the direction of the board and its strategic plan. Goal number 3 is an immediate interest to the board because it's about student well-being, particularly about how we're assisting students to manage stress while at school. And we have a number of goals that are at an initial stage and others that are progressing at this time. And then lastly, goal number 4 is about our investment in the community. The first C in crew is around collaboration, and we recognize that there's a very critical commitment that must be met in terms of how we're reaching out to the community and in what way we're doing follow-up from last year's work plan, and we know that this is a priority for the board as well. As I mentioned to you, excuse me, Mr. Chair, earlier, is that out of those 13 separate actions, 11 are well underway. 1 has been achieved, and 1 is really in the earlier beginning stage. And I hope what that shares with the board is some confidence that the plan is not just paper, it's a focus on practice and implementation as well. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Coombs and Mr. Dawes in a moment here to go a little bit deeper in terms of goal number 1. This is also to suggest that, as you might recall from last year, last spring, Mr. Coombs and Mr. Dawes provided a very detailed focus on how we're trying to attack the graduation goal to make sure that it is a realized outcome by the timeline that the board has set in 2020.
Thank you, Director Sliwa and Mr. Chair, through you. I'll begin and I'll ask Superintendent Dawes to fill in as we go. Okay. And so, as you'll recall, we have a goal of 90% by 2020. The first way that we discussed attacking this was to really determine who we were talking about. And for that purpose, we began tracking cohorts of students. So a cohort would be a group of students who started with us in grade 9. And then we track those students throughout their high school journey. And those that graduate with us within 5 years would be successful cohort graduates. Now, of course, students will graduate after 5 years, and we don't forget them when they go on if they're in their 6th or 7th year. However, for the purposes of our goal, we're attempting to get those students across the line by year 5. And so we started out last year with a cohort originally of 2091. That means that 2,091 students started with us in grade 9 in September of 2013. Of those, 21 left the province, and as you may recall, if they leave the province, they are no longer included in our cohort. If, however, they just leave our board and go to another board in Ontario, they are still included in our cohort, even though they are outside our direct control. The UCDSB students are 1914, and we had 156 of those students, adjusted cohort, who left the board. Of the students who stayed with us, 85.1% graduated. Of the students who left us, 76.3% graduated. It left us with a ministry grad rate of 84.6, which was the same as the year before. So even though we did move the needle on students in the 5th year, we still didn't do enough to move our overall graduation rate. I'm going to talk a little bit about our next year cohort, because right now what we're focusing on is both our 5th year cohort this year as well as our 4th year cohort. I'm going to talk about that in a second. So our strategy last year was to, we hired graduation coaches, and these were teachers who worked directly with students who were in their 5th year, who were in a vulnerable position not to graduate. And our theory of action was, if we could work directly with these students, we would learn enough so that we could then move those strategies farther downriver, so that we could start intervening in grade 9, 10, and 11 instead of waiting for them to fall off the waterfall. So we often use that metaphor. We're really catching them at the bottom of the waterfall, but if we're really going to be successful going forward, we need to intervene farther up the river. And so we currently are looking at a cohort of 2,069, 68. That would be a big cohort. So these students started with us in grade 9 in September of 2014. Their 5-year graduation rate ends in 2019, which is this June. So currently we've had 29 students leave the province. Of those students who are still with us who did not leave the province, 177 have left. We have 1,862 still with us. We're projecting right now, after our first semester, of having 85.5% of them graduating. And of course, we don't know at this point, of those that left us, we don't know what their graduation cohort will be. This is our 2020 cohort. This is the cohort that we want to get to 90%. 1,970 students started with us in September of 2015. We know of 20 that have left our province. Our adjusted cohort is 1,950. Of those 1,950, 128 have left our board, and we are currently looking at those students in their 4th year and intervening with those students who are not working towards a graduation rate, graduating within 4 or 5 years. So what we've been attempting to do over the last little while is starting to look at training up our day school student success teams and administrators so that they can better adjust and try to intervene earlier in the journey. So for example, right now, our 2018 cohort, so those students who started with us just this year, September of 2018, there's 1,980 of those students. We already know of 140 of those students who failed at least one course in the first semester of this year. And over 80% of those students who failed one course are either applied students or workplace students. Majority of our academic students are doing just fine. So we know now that we need to intervene at this time right now. If you've lost one credit, even at this early in your high school career, you more than double your chance of not graduating after 5 years. Sorry. So, so what we are attempting to do again is continue to work with those students in their 4th and 5th year so that we can, they're the most vulnerable, and we're working directly with them to give them every chance to graduate. But we're also working with student success teachers and teams and administrators so that we can intervene earlier and more often. We're also working more closely with our TR Leger partners because they are incredibly important partners. We know that in the 5th year of the cohort, 65% of those students are at TR Leger. and we are working as families of schools so that we have our day schools working with TR Leger so that we have a shared ownership of those schools, of those students. So even if a student is in your school up until grade 12 and then goes to TR Leger, that student is still yours. That student is still in your cohort and affects your graduation rate. So what we're trying to do again is work more closely together. We've learned a lot over the last year. We're trying to apply those learnings earlier in the high school journey so that we can achieve greater success. Thank you, through Mr. Chair. I'll pass this over to Superintendent Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Coombs. Through you, Mr. Chair. So the Director's Work Plan goal number 3 is to increase capacity of our students to deal with stress and create an environment where students feel valued and supported by ensuring they have a voice, feel in control, and can act as agents of change. So tonight what we're going to talk about is goal 3, and in particular we're going to zero in on priority or initiative number 3. And that priority or initiative number 3 is to further facilitate the process of bringing school teams together to establish school wellness goals and assess their impact on wellness at school, such that student voice and data is used to inform student wellness goals across the district. So to that end, our schools have been very busy with creating their wellness portion of their SIPSAW goals. So every school in our district has created their SIPSAW goals. And of course, the first part of a SIPSAW focuses on math and literacy, and then the final part is around wellness. Those are the 3 areas of focus. All schools have created those, and something that many of our schools have been working on, and it relates directly to this priority that we're discussing tonight, is around having student voice incorporated in that. So the great work that's been done around Tell Them For Me data and bringing those teams together, a lot of schools have used that and built that into their wellness goals. So the students are surveyed, we get the data from them about what they think is affecting their wellness at school, and then goals for the school plans are built around that. And there's been much work done this year again. On October 30th, school teams met to discuss the data. In November 20th, system staff conducted analysis to look at the plans and see where folks were at with them. And just as recently as March 21st, they met with administrators and lead teacher along with student senators and trustees came together to analyze the school plans and learn about how the data collected can drive goals and actions and discuss next steps with the school-based teams. So all of that has taken place. So what I want to share with you tonight is a little bit of what's in some of these goals. This is a pretty high-level view to give you a snapshot. Again, it's every school that has created these, and so we pulled some of the data to see, okay, what are people focusing on in their wellness goals? And you'll see up here the priorities of our schools for their wellness goals. It shows the percentage of them working on these different categories, with the final one being other, because there was enough of a variety we couldn't put it all in one graph. But you'll see the largest one there is, it says calm problem solving. So that's around calming strategies. That's around helping students understand their triggers, and then also helping them using self-soothing strategies so that they're ready to learn again. Welcoming environments up there. We heard in our presentation tonight from Principal Fisher about how in some of their classrooms they've gone in and decluttered them and made sure that it's a welcoming classroom and a calming environment. Stress and mood, character development, engagement, and expected behavior. So we see a variety of things that folks are working on, and all of them go back to trying to listen to student voice, see what the students are telling us and what the staff are saying about what we need to do to ensure our students are well at school. So as I think most people are familiar, when we have our SIPSAWs, you have the goals and then you have your if-then statements. This data shows you what some of those schools then use for their if statements. So the number one there is student programs. So just to elaborate a little bit on that so you know that what we're talking about. That includes anything from the zones or WITS, Kelso's Choices in your schools. You'll see different programs that are used. And each of them kind of have the overall goal of helping students come up with ways to self-regulate and to learn strategies for managing their emotions and coping well in school. But again, there's a variety of programs that we use for that. The next one's multiple. Those are people that had a variety of different things that they were going to try. Student and parent voice, clubs and recreation, academic, and then we see there as well enhanced student literacy skills, mental health literacy skills, which has been another focus in our mental health plan for the board. This last slide that you see up here in front of you, this puzzle piece graphic represents what schools are working on in their SIPSAWs, and it also represents what we're focusing on with our professional development that we're working with staff. So you'll see on this, in the interest of keeping it small, we've used a lot of acronyms, that and because we love acronyms in education. So there's quite a few items up there, and I'll just share some of those with you. But I'm going to have to pull it up in front of me because I'm having trouble reading that because it's so small. So at the very top, you'll see that we have dealing with stress. So always everyday mental health in classrooms for the K-8, and then the equivalent at the secondary is the wellness moments. And then we have things that we do often in class, so those would be grade-specific programs, Mind Masters. It says Santor there. Again, we have Dr. Santor that we work with and some resources that we have through that program. KHST, that's Kids Have Stress Too, is what that stands for. And then the next one there says Stress Lessons. That's actually what they're called for our grade 9 to 12 students. And then occasionally what we do is the Supporting Minds documents and other resources. Been a great deal of training that's continued again this year. That speaks to priority initiative number 1 from our goal 3. And we've trained this year 520 staff, and I had refresher training for our administrators, and that's our NTIP teachers, EAs, and LRTs. Down on the left-hand quadrant here of this puzzle piece, you'll see welcoming classrooms. And so what we always do in our schools, classroom organization, again, what Principal Fisher talked about earlier, sensory-friendly classrooms. What we do often, SMH reflection. And so again with these acronyms, but that used to be referred to as School Mental Health Assist. The name is recently changed to School Mental Health Ontario. Some of the names of some of these programs in the last few months have been changing, but a lot of the programming is the same. UDL stands for Universal Design for Learning and Learning for All. And then occasionally with the SST process, again some acronyms, but CAPS, and that is Comprehensive Autism Planning Schedules that we work with. And then C, of course, is for our special education funding for equipment for students that need it. And then in the bottom right quadrant, expectations and celebrations. So teaching expectations and celebrations, always classroom management module, PBIS, which was presented to this board. And again, that's around positive behavior interventions and supports. Functional thinking form, intro to ABA, and then ABA is applied behavior analysis, SST process with data tracking and behavior programming. So as you can see, quite an extensive list of different things that we're doing and that we're working on that schools are addressing specifically, and that we're providing at a system level training for our staff around. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ferguson.
So, Mr. Chair, through you, just to close off the presentation this evening, just a reminder, thank you very much, that there'll be one more status update for this current academic year. And then, just as we did last fall, we'll close off a report to the board about how we wrapped up the plan's implementation and what our successes were and what our key learnings were, and we would bring that back to the board in September. We'll turn that back over to you, Mr. Chair, to see if there's any questions for staff.
Thank you, Director. Are there any questions? There's a lot there, I know. Seeing none, thank you, Director.
Thank you.
I think we'll be spending some time reading the document, for one thing. We are going to move on there now to report from private session. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So the report is that at its meeting of the whole committee of the whole meeting in private session March 6, 2019, one litigation matter was discussed and no recommendation was brought forward to the board. 1301 is dealing with the 2019-2020 school year calendar. I will turn this over to Superintendent Perry.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I am bringing forward a proposed calendar for the 2019-2020 school year for approval by the Board of Trustees. As you know, the school year calendar is a long process of consultation. So we began consultation in November of this current academic year by reviewing the established ministry calendar. The Ministry of Education provides us with a skeleton calendar that will demark the Christmas holidays and also the March break, the beginning of the school year and the end of the school year. There was some consultation at the beginning with PIC and SEAC, followed by the Initiatives Committee, and we proceeded then into taking a look at the professional development days when we received the communication from the ministry with respect to the direction for the professional development days. In consultation with program department and also with the family of schools superintendents, we had a discussion around where those professional development days were going to be placed, and some content discussed as well at that point. So in January of 2019, after I had the consultation with the senior management team, I was able to take the school year calendar to our coterminous board and have a discussion about aligning the calendar so that we would be able to be very efficient with transportation and share costs of transportation. And in February, brought that calendar back to senior management again. And then we put the calendar out to public consultation, and I'll be able to share some of that feedback in a moment. And I'm bringing it to you here tonight and hoping that we can have approval of this calendar so that it can be submitted to the Ministry of Education prior to the May 1st deadline for submission. So the school year calendar that's proposed right now looks as you see on the screen. What we're looking at is a start date. The school year would begin on September 3rd, but September 3rd is a professional activity day, and I'll explain that a little bit later. It would run until June the 26th, but June 26th would also be a professional activity day. So students would be in classes from September 4th until June the 25th. We have the exam days listed on the calendar already, and our PA days are also outlined as well. Christmas break and March break were set by the ministry. So we have 7 professional activity days, and they have been listed on the calendar. The September 3rd date is one that is highly beneficial for establishing the school year direction, having staff have an opportunity to complete health and safety training, having staff have an opportunity to talk about their SIPSA goals and establish the direction prior to students coming in. And it's also a fantastic opportunity for students who may have difficulty transitioning to school to be able to come and visit at the school to see their classroom, meet their teacher prior to the first day of classes. In terms of feedback, we put it out through social media for consultation. We had 52 responses that came through the public feedback process, and I received quite a few responses personally as well through my own email. So when we look at 30% have a concern with the PA day, there was concern on both sides in terms, not necessarily concern. We had some people who were worried that it looked like the teachers were having an additional holiday after a very long summer. And of course, the PA day is not a holiday for teachers. It's actually a very effective way to begin a school year. We begin our second semester with a PA day. Beginning the first semester is also quite effective and maybe even more beneficial because it is the beginning of the school year after teachers and other educational staff have not been together. So it's a good time to come together and set direction for the school year. The other commentary within the September 3rd PA day was actually very positive. Several parents made comments about the fact that Labor Day weekend is always a family weekend and it's very difficult to try and get back and get things ready for school startup, so having that extra day will take stress off. And the ones that came to my personal email were very much by staff saying this is a wonderful way to begin the school year because it gives us an opportunity to come together and set direction and get things ready for kids so that we're ready to roll on the first day of classes. 26% said that they were quite satisfied with the calendar and wouldn't make any recommendations. We did have 2 responses, actually maybe one more than 2, make a comment that the November 1st PA day should be, the PA day that is in October should be moved to November 1st so that teachers wouldn't suffer the consequences of Halloween in the schools. The semester turnaround date, there was a comment about it, but it wasn't clear what the concern was about semester turnaround date. I did have somebody say don't start the new semester on a Friday, but the calendar doesn't start the new semester on a Friday, so it wasn't quite clear what that particular comment was. There was a comment about the second PA day in September, and that one is to align with the coterminus board to make sure that we are being very efficient again with the use of our transportation. We had some requests for changing of the Christmas break. That's not something that we have any control over because it's set by the ministry. And again, PA days before March break and in October. And then there were some commentary around make sure the PA day is not on Black Friday, but the sub-commentary on that one was because parents were doing Christmas shopping and couldn't do the Christmas shopping with their children at home on a PA day. And then the too many PA days, that's something that we have limited control over. We have 3 that are mandated by the ministry and 4 that can be established by the board, and those professional activity days are used for the benefit of our staff and moving forward in their professional development. So if there are any questions, that essentially is the school year calendar that's proposed.
Trustee Barry?
I move the exception of the school year calendar.
We have the motion.
As presented.
I'll read the motion first, and then we can have a discussion on it. That the Upper Canada District School Board approves the proposed 2019-2020 school year calendar and submits this version to the Ministry of Education for their approval as per the required timelines. Could I have a mover, please? Trustee Barry, seconder. Trustee Cram? Any discussion? Trustee Cram?
Thanks, Chair. Question really doesn't have to do with the ministry calendar. Do we know at this point when our EQA testing is scheduled for next year?
That's something through you, Mr. Chair, something I don't have the exact dates for next year at this point, but it's something that we can provide once they're made available to us.
I'm wondering if once the calendar is published and if we know those dates, that those can be specified in the calendar.
Mr. Chair, through you, what's not currently featured in the calendar is things like the final examination dates and EQAO testing, but we will have that as part of the reference at the bottom of the calendar. I think we do that each year, as I'm not mistaken.
Any further questions? Can we call the vote, please?
I've lost my connection, so I'll have to vote by hand.
Could I have a motion or hands up, please? All in favor?
I'm in favor. I'm not getting the motion either.
Motion is carried. So at this point, trustees, we have a decision to make. We are supposed to go into private session, in which case we will probably have to have a motion to extend. So I propose to you 2 options. One, that we do that, and the second one is there are 2 items in the private session. The first one is really a non-item, no discussion really, because there is nothing to report. And the second one does warrant some time. So if I ask your favor.
Can we ask the question? If you were to make a forecast, how long are you looking at for the second item?
It would be your call. 20 minutes.
Can we extend until 10:30? That way we have lots of time if we...
I will entertain a motion to extend the timeline to 10:30. up to 10:30. Mover, please.
I'll move it.
Trustee Swan. Trustee McDonald. Hands up, please. In favor? Opposed? Carried. So at this point, I guess I turn the chair over to you.
Motion to go into private.
Right. Thank you. Do I have a motion then to go into private session? Moved by Trustee Barry. Seconder. Trustee McDonald. All in favor? Carried. We're into private session.